Chapter 37. Ruffians and scoundrels in society always like to pretend to be weak in order to win sympathy and reap benefits. It was clear that Madame Dong was such a person. There were many ways to deal with Madame Dong. Given Wang Ling's current realm, he could send the old lady up into the atmosphere in the blink of an eye, through outer space, and then directly into the Milky Way, so that she could live side by side with the sun for the rest of her life. Or, an even simpler method was to directly open the heavenly eye and summon the inner flames of a star and scatter the ashes on the spot. But Wang Ling didn't want to be nosy. Except for those shadow stream killers who regarded human life as dirt, Wang Ling had never personally killed anyone. Growing up, Father and Mother Wang had taught him that students should act like students, not think about standing out, and be down to earth in their studies. The most important thing was to abide by the core values of cultivation. This was the spirit energy information era. And in the scientific cultivation era, killing people wouldn't solve any problems. In the end, Madame Dong waved her sleeves and left with a suitcase in her arms, satisfied and content. I never thought that young people nowadays would be so generous. Madame Dong sighed in her heart and was wild with joy. A whole 5 million. Even if she bumped into porcelain on this street for more than 10 years, she wouldn't have gained as much in one night. Wang Ling watched Madame Dong leave with an indifferent expression on his face. The Pengxi gang might seem difficult to deal with, but in the end, they still couldn't beat his great illusion spell. Madame Dong thought that she was holding a suitcase full of cash, but in fact, it was nothing more than a clumsy broken stone. Keep a low profile, handle it carefully. Since this was a problem that could be solved with a divine power, Wang Ling's principle had always been to avoid violence if he could. Otherwise, if they really fought, the city would collapse. And if worse came to worst, the earth would be destroyed. This wasn't what Wang Ling wanted to see. This time, Wang Ling used 2 divine powers in total. The first was the Great Illusion spell on Madame Dong. The second divine ability was used on the stone that Madame Dong was holding. This spell was called the Great Truth Spell, and had an extremely powerful brainwashing effect. Once Madame Dong brought the stone back to the Pengxi gang, the core cultivation values that Wang Ling had carved into the stone would immediately activate. Prosperity, democracy, civilization, harmony, freedom, equality, justice, rule of law, patriotism, dedication, integrity, friendliness. At that time, all the scammers would be purified by the 24 mantras. Watching Madame Dong's back disappear at the end of the road, Wang Ling couldn't help sighing in his heart. It really wasn't King easy for him for all these people. Why did the old lady leave with a rock in her arms? This scene was a little confusing to the little companions. Maybe it's because of the ban on square dancing, coupled with the fact that his children are unfilial, and his unhappy life in his later years. He was mentally stimulated. Feather Lin analyzed seriously. Lotus Sun also shook her head. If the spiritual world of the elderly is rich enough, who would deliberately try to cheat in order to find excitement? Therefore, after a heated discussion, everyone came to a conclusion. In the end, it was all the system's fault. It was all the world's fault. Wednesday of the 3rd week of school, 8 in the morning. Liang Wei returned to the student union office with a swollen face, because he had been beaten up by the old men and women of the Pengxi gang. The lumps on his head were like several small Wangzai steamed buns, stacked on top of each other. Even Tang Jingze was stupefied for a good while when he saw it. "Student, who are you looking for?" "Liang Wei." Fang Huaqing pushed up his glasses. Although Liang Wei looked miserable at the moment, and had a pile of Wangzai steamed buns of various sizes on his head, Fang Huaqing could still see through the appearance and recognize Liang Wei from his iconic big lips. "What happened to you?" Liang Wei covered his face and wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He wailed in grief and indignation. "I was beaten up." "What on earth happened?" Tang Jingze asked. Liang Wei took out a local morning newspaper and slapped it on the table. Then, Tang Jingze saw the eye-catching and bolded headline on the densely packed newspaper. Today's front page news. The Peiyuan District Pengxi gang revolted last night. The old men and women turned themselves into the police one after another, and sang praises of the core cultivation values. The corner of Tang Jing's mouth twitched. No one knew what on earth had gotten into this bunch of old men and women. Under old Madame Dong's leadership, they had successfully instigated a rebellion overnight, turning themselves in. Under old Madame Dong's leadership, the entire Peiyuan district Pengxi Gang branch threatened to break away from the main Pengxi Gang and change its name to the General Administration of Harmony. At the thought of what had happened last night, even a grown man like Liang Wei couldn't help his eyes turning red with grievance. As the employer, when Liang Wei had hired old Madame Dong yesterday, he had already arranged a meeting place for this morning. He had planned to personally check on the results. But what Liang Wei had never expected was that halfway there, old Madame Dong would lead a group of muscular old men and surround him in a small corner. By now, old Madame Dong's temperament was completely different from last night. She wore a red ribbon with the word harmony written on it on her arm. She glared at Liang Wei in a stern voice and muttered the 24 mantras. Liang Wei already couldn't remember what old Madame Dong had said at the time. After old Madame Dong finished reciting the 24 mantras, she took out a red book and began to read it aloud. In view of the fact that student Liang Wei maliciously hired a Pengxi gang and disturbed public order, I hereby announce the verdict of his trial. Then, with a wave of her hand, old Madame Dong bluntly declared him guilty. Crime of anti-cultivation harmony. Right after that, several muscular old men came over. Although old Madame Dong was an ordinary person, that didn't mean that there were no cultivators in the Pengxi gang. If it had been just old Madame Dong alone, Liang Wei would have been able to deal with her. Unfortunately, the 8 old men surrounding him were all at the foundation establishment stage. And then there was no and then. Liang Wei didn't even get to call out Yalai Dai before the 8 old men ruthlessly bullied him in turn, and he returned to school with a bloody nose and a swollen face. Tang Jingze. Fang Huaqing. Now Tang Jingze and Fang Huaqing really felt like they had seen a ghost. Since the arrival of that bunch of people from number 60 high school yesterday, there had been no end of trouble. Now, even this bunch of stubborn old men and women from the Pengxi gang had King set things right in one night. What the K was there left to play? Tang Jingze's heart was currently very complicated. His planned face-slapping operation had been countered by the opponent, and even his revenge plan had been repeatedly disrupted by some mysterious force. This was clearly their number 59 high school's territory. But in the end, not only had this bunch of people from number 60 high school openly come in, they had even planted a red flag on their territory. This absolutely couldn't be tolerated. Gazing out the window, Tang Jingze sighed inwardly. Now that things have come to this, it looks like we can only ask that senior to step in. Him. Speaking of that senior, Fang Huaqing and Liang Wei instantly understood. Given the current situation, they could only ask that senior for help, which was probably the only way for number 59 high school to turn the tables on them. Every school had at least 1 or 2 delinquents. Number 60 high school had 1, and number 59 high school was naturally no exception. There were only 2 days left until the end of the exchange meet. Not only had Tang Jingze's humiliating plan against number 60 high school so far failed, it had even backfired. He had shot himself in the foot and smashed his own toes. In any case, there were still 2 days left, and Tang Jingze felt that it was necessary to win back face. In the morning, Tang Jingze and the members of the student union at number 59 high school found that legendary delinquent senior He Bufeng. The wind blows on campus, and there's a storm everywhere. This was the meaning behind this senior He's name. Overall, it was very much in line with this delinquent's style. In any case, just from his name, it was obvious that this senior always wanted to stir up big news, and was an extremely restless existence. Tang Jingze actually didn't know much about this senior He's background. He only knew that this senior He Bufeng had a number code called 8823. This string of numbers didn't represent his student number, nor did it refer to anything in particular. Instead, it referred to the total number of marks this senior he had obtained in all subjects in the 3 years since the first batch of students enrolled until now, which was only 8823. This was a record low for number 59 high school. Furthermore, This record had yet to be broken. After all the exam subjects were now unified on a 1,000-point scale. From the start of school, there had been weekly tests, monthly tests, and so on, but the total score hadn't even broken 10,000, which sounded a little sensational. This year, it just so happened that this senior he buffing was repeating his third year in Senior 3. All in all, this was a piece of sticky candy that even Director Xie felt was giving him a headache. If it wasn't for the fact that even Tang Jingze was at his wits' end this time, he wouldn't have asked this great god to stand up for the student union. In the morning, Tang Jingze used the student union's records to find this delinquent senior's number and arranged a meeting place. The men's toilet on the second floor of the teaching building was this delinquent senior's territory. Students who knew the rules usually wouldn't enter this place of their own accord. Otherwise, it was very likely that this delinquent would force their heads into the toilet bowl to wash their faces. As the president of the student union, Tang Jingze had naturally received a lot of reports, but like most teachers, he had chosen to turn a blind eye to them. This was mainly because of this delinquent's background, because he Bufeng's grandfather was the pretentious school director behind number 59 high school. With this layer of relationship here, this was also the reason why number 59 high school hadn't expelled this delinquent. "You're the one who wants to meet Senior He?" Tang Jingze and the others had just arrived on the second floor when a teenager wearing a graffiti vest immediately called out to them. Tang Jingze glanced at this person's style. He was about 1.7 meters tall and didn't wear his school uniform jacket properly, instead tying the sleeves in a bow at his waist. The most eye-catching thing about him was his 10-centimeter long hair, which perfectly made up for the height gap between them. Even among all the punks, this hairstyle was as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns, and was a terrifying existence. Tang Jingze, Fang Huaqing and Liang Wei all sucked in cold breaths of air at the same time. This style was really a bit of an eyesore. "Senior, is it convenient right now?" Tang Jingze asked softly. He felt that he was usually very bad and had bullied a lot of people. But in front of this delinquent senior, he didn't dare be careless at all. The punk snorted and pointed to the men's toilet on the side as he said with a smile, "Senior has been waiting inside for a long time. Go in." Chapter 38. Student exchanges between students were certainly one aspect of the exchange meet between the two schools. But discussions between teachers were also very important. It wasn't even 8 o'clock in the morning when Old Antique was dragged away for a meeting as the lead teacher of number 60 high school. Old Antique didn't recognize a single teacher in the entire venue. Old Antique could vaguely hear what the other teachers were saying about him through the murmurs in the air. Things like he was a bookworm in theory of history who only knew how to teach without any ability at all. Actually, whether it was Old Antique as a teacher now or as a student back then, students who specialized in flying swords and talismans had always criticized the students who studied theory of history. Even though Old Antique was now a teacher, those who taught flying swords and talismans also looked down on those who taught history from the bottom of their hearts. They always felt that these people were very dull and didn't have any real talent. In private, Old Antique had always called this discrimination, stereotypes. Old Antique couldn't help thinking of his time as a student. He had heard a lot of gossip, so even when he heard it now, his expression was very calm, and he just sighed at how time passed by so quickly, and how it was impossible to return to those beautiful youthful days. The topic of discussion in the morning meeting between the two schools was naturally the disintegration of the Pengxi gang, which had been the hottest topic in the morning papers. This matter had blown up quite a bit. This was because the Peiyuan district branch of the Pengxi gang had always been a big problem for the Cultivation police station in charge of this area. Now that it had been disintegrated overnight, the students and teachers had spread the news, and as they chatted, everyone found out. "Teachers, quiet down. The regular meeting will now officially begin." The teacher presiding over the meeting was precisely number 59 high school's director Xie. "Seeing that everyone is having such a heated discussion, I'm sure you've all heard about it. This incident happened very suddenly. Although there are still a small number of remnants of the Pengxi gang in Peiyuan district who are taking advantage of the situation to cause trouble. But for now, we don't have to worry about students scamming others when they're outside. The focus of this meeting was issued by the General Administration of 100 schools. As soon as the incident happened, we mainly want to hear what all the teachers think about Madame Dong's reorganization of the General Administration of Harmony after the disintegration of the Pengxi gang in our district. Head teacher Xia's words once again sparked a heated discussion. The teachers whispered to each other and discussed fervently. Her gaze fell on Old Antique, and she noticed that this theory of history teacher from another school was exceptionally quiet, as he silently listened to the opinions of the other teachers and nodded repeatedly with a gentle smile on his face. Director Xia's face inexplicably heated up. Some people agreed with the existence of the General Administration of Harmony and believed that it was beneficial. A male teacher nodded. Although the Pengxi gang has indeed made many mistakes in the past, destroying social harmony and civilization, and at the same time bringing heavy economic losses to the teachers and students in the surrounding areas. But now that the General Administration of Harmony had been reorganized, it specialized in opposing the Pengxi gang and supervising the bad behavior of society. I think it's great. A female teacher snorted and objected. What's so good about it? It was just a different method of harassment. When I went to work this morning, an old lady said that I ran a yellow light, stopped me and lectured me for a long time. My spirit sword ran out of electricity. I was almost late for work. A female teacher at the side was instantly shocked. Teacher Lin's spirit sword is electric? Yeah. I've been grading homework until midnight every day recently, and I really don't have the energy. This new electric spirit sword from Chanel is pretty good, and it saved me a lot of spirit energy. I can face work with plenty of energy every day. The female teacher twirled her hair proudly, then held out her hand. The most important thing is that it takes 5 minutes to charge and 2 hours to fly on it. I'll strongly recommend it to all of you. Really? That's awesome. Where did you buy it? They sell Tianmiao in Jingxi. Are they very expensive? Tianmiao flower. Jingxi promissory note. These things are very useful. Director Xia's face instantly darkened. This bunch of guys. How could they be so undisciplined in a meeting in front of outsiders? What kind of propriety was this? She stole a glance at Old Antique next to her, who looked like he was used to big storms. Director Xia Huichuan's mouth couldn't help twitching. Fortunately, this teacher from another school didn't say anything. Otherwise, she would have lost a lot of face. Suppressing her anger, Director Xia reminded everyone in a low voice. Teachers, please pay attention. Don't go astray. This is a direct order from the General Administration of 100 schools. I hope everyone will take it seriously. The director still had some authority. Hearing Director Xia's words, the noisy female teachers instantly quieted down. At the same time, they looked gratefully at Old Antique. It was only when teachers from another school were present that Director Xia would speak so calmly. Normally, Director Xia wouldn't have been able to suppress the power in her body, and would have used her pressure to intimidate everyone. Before Wang Ling had set foot in No. 59 High School. The most easily broken thing at number 59 High School was the table in the teacher's conference room. Every time Director Xia lost control of her pressure in a meeting, the legs of the table would definitely break. The rectangular table in front of Old Antique had just arrived 2 days ago. Seeing that the scene had quietened down, Director Xia secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Thinking of the chaotic student exchange meeting that Tang Jingze had hosted yesterday, Director Xia felt a lingering fear in her heart. After all, not everyone had the same magnetic field as Lotus Sunday. Furthermore, Old Antique wouldn't be able to imitate the National School Bell's electromagnetic gun. But Wang Ling had always felt that as a fatty, Old Antique had his own unique charisma. Before Old Antique had come to number 59 High School, Director Xia had done a thorough investigation on this fatty, who had taught at number 60 High School for more than 10 years, and had always been the most highly regarded teacher. Apart from being gentle in front of others and behind others from beginning to end, she had never understood what on earth it was about Old Antique that attracted the students. The main reason was still Old Antique's dexterity in switching between the two images and using them. In front of the students, Old Antique usually preferred to maintain an amiable and amusing image when he was in gossip mode. But that didn't mean that Old Antique wasn't a reserved person. For example, in the regular teachers' meeting now, Old Antique had turned on the second artistic mode. What was an artistic youth? It was saying inexplicable things and doing inexplicable things. He was indifferent when dealing with people, and his reasoning was short and concise. At first, it didn't sound like much, but after thinking about it carefully, it made a lot of sense. To be honest, Wang Ling actually preferred Old Antique's second image, because he could always learn a lot from it. But it wasn't easy to see Old Antique in this completely different style. So from the moment Old Antique had left the school dormitory early in the morning, Wang Ling had been secretly observing him with his heavenly eye. It was very clear that after Director Xie straightened out the discipline, the entire focus of the meeting was on Old Antique, this teacher from another school. It was very quiet in the hall, and no one dared to speak. The morning breeze blew slowly through the window, brushing past Old Antique's watermelon head and blowing his neat bangs. Director Xie's gaze was blank for a moment, and she inexplicably felt that in some sense, this fatty was actually pretty handsome. Old Antique looked steadily forward as he stared at the bright and clean table, which happened to reflect Director Xie's image. This scene unsettled Director Xie once again. Why is he staring at my reflection? Don't tell me, he's interested in me? Does he like me? Otherwise, why is he staring at me? Old Antique stared blankly at the table, but Wang Ling didn't have the energy to ridicule him. This was clearly out of respect. Who would stare at someone else's face during a meeting? How rude was that? Facing Director Xie Huaichuan, Wang Ling now had very complicated feelings, because it was very obvious that this was another old girl in love who was trying to figure things out herself. Wait a minute. Why did he say another? Old Antique had always been the type to take a good look at him, and the more he looked at him, the more he liked him. This was what Wang Ling meant by personal charisma and inner qualities. Inner qualities, understand? How could an average person understand the inner qualities of an artistic youth? Old Antique's inner qualities weren't something that Lotus Sun could imitate. Their strategies were different. Lotus Sun's was a passerby's, while Old Antique's was an auntie's. And so 5 minutes passed. Director Xie still didn't ask any questions, and just felt her face grow hotter as she looked at Old Antique. Like her name, she really was like a young girl in love. Old Antique had been staring at the table for a very long time, and Director Xie's face was full of shame. This was the first time a man had stared at her for so long. Just like that, everyone followed Director Xie and quietly looked at Old Antique. Some of the female teachers had very sharp eyes, and for some reason, they felt that Director Xie's face was a little red. 10 minutes passed. There was still no sound, and the whole conference room was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. And then 20 minutes passed. Wang Ling. Old Antique's hair still fluttered hysterically in the cool breeze. His gaze was gentle as water as he looked at Director Xie. Director Xie, do you want to ask me a question? Director Xie was suddenly stupefied by this magnetic voice. It was only at that moment that she realized she actually hadn't asked Old Antique a question yet. Director Xie's face instantly turned red, and she put on the bashful expression of an old girl. "Ah, Teacher Wang, I'm so sorry." All the teachers were stunned. What had they seen? What had they heard? And what the hell was this? That sounded a little like she was panting a little. An old virgin who was approaching middle age, who had been in the workplace for many years, and who didn't panic when faced with trouble, had actually apologized. Actually blushed. Furthermore, she had actually shown an infatuated expression toward a fatty who taught history. What the F***K? Was this love at first sight? F***K. This plot development was a little incomprehensible. Wang Ling was already stupefied. It could only be said that Old Antique was Old Antique in the end. He hadn't even made a bloody hole in the wall, and had actually conquered number 59 high school's toughest old bone. Old Antique nodded calmly, still maintaining the indifference of an artsy young man. Now Old Antique felt that the time was ripe. At that moment, Although the situation was a little awkward, it was time for the artsy young man to save the day. Turning his head slightly, Old Antique swept a glance out the window out of the corner of his eye. In the cool breeze, Old Antique's next words shook everyone's hearts. The wind today is very, very dazzling. In the conference room, all the teachers couldn't help getting goosebumps. Chapter 39. Old Antique's identity had always been a mystery. After Old Antique had revealed his true strength in front of Lotus Sun that day, she had actually sent people to secretly investigate his background. But the strange thing was that they hadn't found anything. If even someone with Lotus Sun's background couldn't find anything, it would be even more difficult for anyone else to find out Old Antique's true identity. Of course, if he wanted to investigate, Wang Ling could investigate in many ways. One of the 3,000 great spells, the Great Recall spell, contained many abilities. It included memory replacement, memory deletion, and memory retrieval. When Wang Ling had searched Old Antique's memories before, he had found that one of them had been sealed away by Old Antique. If Wang Ling forcibly searched it, he would inflict mental damage on Old Antique. So in the end, although Wang Ling was very curious, he gave up. Of course, there were other ways to get to the bottom of this. For example, Headmaster Chen and Director Shi. As school leaders at number 60 high school, they might know everything about Old Antique's background. But since Old Antique had chosen to conceal his identity, Wang Ling felt that there was no need to get to the bottom of it. Old Antique's identity was certainly mysterious to Wang Ling. But apart from this identity, Old Antique was, in the end, just a glutton who loved to gossip, and was sometimes funny and sometimes artistic. This was also the image of an immortal master that Old Antique had worked hard to portray in front of his students after teaching for so many years. It had to be said that Old Antique had hidden himself very well. After the short teachers' meeting in the morning, Wang Ling's understanding of Old Antique had deepened considerably. It turned out that in artistic mode, Old Antique had a passive ability to win over old ants. Wang Ling even felt that Old Antique should write a book called Artistic Youth and Literary Girls. As long as Old Antique wrote down all the golden lines that he had been hiding in his artistic mode all these years, Wang Ling felt that he could win over all the middle-aged female warriors in the world. When it came to love, it had always been like a tortoise looking at a mung bean. As long as they met, it was fine. But the love between an artistic youth and a literary girl, Wang Ling said that he didn't understand it at all. Self-strategizing type women are really scary, whether they were young girls or old ants. This was what Wang Ling thought. He didn't care whether Director Xie and Old Antique's spring had started or not, but the spring radio gymnastics was about to begin. Early spring in Shanghai City was still a little chilly. It was very close to the frozen sea, and every year at this time of the year, it would enter spring a beat later than other cities, and enter winter a beat earlier. Some experts believed that the cold air of the frozen sea would destabilize the foundations of foundation establishment cultivators. In the end, for the sake of the students' foundation, the major colleges and universities suspended the radio calisthenics not long after school started. And Wang Ling naturally avoided this problem for the time being. But unfortunately, Shanghai City had suddenly warmed up today. After 2 classes with the students of number 59 high school, not long after Old Antique's regular teachers' meeting in the morning, the school broadcast rang out punctually at 9:30. The students lined up and walked to the field under the leadership of the short students. The 5 people from number 60 high school lined up in a line at the end of the sports field. Wang Ling still chose to stand at the very back. It had been thousands of years since the founding of Huaxiao Nation, and its name had become increasingly fantastical and down-to-earth. From the first set of radio calisthenics, the rising sun, to descendants of the sun, from the eagle takes off, to Kunpeng spreads its wings, from the vitality of youth, to the passion of building a foundation, from dancing of youth, to Wushu universe. It could be said that the name of radio calisthenics had gradually evolved from mass square style to fantasy cultivation style. Not only did it praise the flowers of the motherland, it also greatly praised the boundless vitality of the younger generation of cultivators. Some people believed that the names of radio calisthenics symbolized the development and progress of the times. For example, the 250th set of radio calisthenics, Perfect World. Just from the name alone, one could see Huaxiao Nation's boundless hope for a better future. Wang Ling had in fact deliberately broken number 59 high school's school broadcast speaker before, but he had never expected number 59 high school to actually have a F***King human band. Several teachers from number 59 high school's music department spontaneously picked up their instruments and hit gongs and drums. It was a magnificent sight in front of them. Truly, man proposes, God disposes. Wang Ling sucked in a cold breath at this scene. As the magical rhythm of the music rang out, the first music for the 250th set of radio calisthenics finished playing. The PE teacher stood on the rostrum and used the lion's roar spell to amplify the rhythm of the human band's music, shouting out the beat as he danced. Everyone follow my rhythm. The 250th set of radio calisthenics Perfect World preparatory section. Step on the spot, go. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 2 2 3 4 again. Although the name of the radio calisthenics had changed many times, the overall process hadn't changed much. Once the preparatory section was over, it was followed by stretching exercises and chest expansions. Wang Ling could just about accept these exercises to stretch his muscles and bones. Although the range of the movements was a little big, they basically didn't require much strength. But when it came to the kicking and jumping exercises, he really couldn't stay calm. Moreover, the power of the Dao Talisman seal had been greatly reduced. Whether it was the kicking or the jumping exercises, if Wang Ling didn't control his strength carefully, it could lead to irreversible consequences. Regional earthquakes, tectonic shifts, landslides, tsunamis, mudslides, all of these could happen. Therefore, in order to prevent the above situations from happening, Wang Ling's radio calisthenics had always been soft. He looked weak and boneless, and didn't dare use too much strength at all. In the words of a PE teacher, he was spineless and effeminate. For this reason, when he was at number 60 high school, the teachers in the sports department used him more than once as a negative example. During the sports team's regular teachers' meeting, he had spared no effort in singling out Wang Ling and severely criticized him. Of course, it wasn't that Wang Ling couldn't understand how the teachers felt. This was especially true for the teachers of the physical education department. Of course, they hoped to see the energetic students strutting on the field with their heads held high and their chests puffed out. But he felt that if he got serious and something went wrong, who would be able to bear the responsibility? In the face of the supercilious looks from the teachers around him, he withstood the pressure and finished the entire set of radio calisthenics. Very good. Everything was calm and peaceful. There were no accidents and no casualties. Nowadays, even doing radio calisthenics made one's skin crawl. Wang Ling thought that there was no one else like this. As a child, Wang Ling's strength had been very small and had still been manageable. But as he gradually grew up, his realm and all his attributes increased uncontrollably, and Wang Ling felt that life was becoming more and more difficult. He was on tenterhooks, even when doing radio calisthenics. Now that things had come to this, Wang Ling felt that he really had to change the situation. For example, on the night of the next full moon, he could use the Great Moon Reading spell to brainwash the entire population. He could completely revamp the radio calisthenics system, change it to something that he could accept. Taiji Fist might be a good choice. Chapter 40. After the morning radio calisthenics, around noon, Old Antique found Wang Ling for a heart-to-heart talk in a small corner. There was nothing else. It was still about the broadcast gymnastics. Actually, Wang Ling understood very well. After all, they were representing the school this time, especially since they were outside the school. He also needed to pay attention to his image and temperament. Most teachers believed that no matter how good a student was at using a spirit sword, or how proficient they were at drawing talismans, the ordinary broadcast gymnastics was the event that could best reflect the spirit of the students. This was also the reason why, even in the scientific cultivation era, major cultivation colleges and universities still hadn't banned radio gymnastics. Fortunately, Old Antique was a gentle person. Being approachable had always been one of Old Antique's characteristics. In addition, he seemed to have found his spring after the regular classroom meeting this morning, and was in a particularly good mood. After saying a few simple words to Wang Ling to pay attention to his image as a student of number 60 high school, she patted her butt and skipped away briskly. Quietly, Old Antique left, just as quietly as he had come. Looking at Old Antique's current state, Wang Ling instantly thought of this poem in his heart. An amusing artistic youth who had fallen in love. Sure enough, people in love all have problems with their brains. For the first time, Wang Ling felt that this bouncing Old Antique was a little abnormal. After this private conversation with Old Antique this time, Wang Ling also made a simple assumption. If it hadn't been Old Antique who had pulled him into this little corner this time, but Teacher Pan, who had an even more violent temper. Given Teacher Pan's personality, Wang Ling felt that she might not be able to resist making a move on him. At this thought, Wang Ling couldn't help shuddering. The grass on the grave of the last person to forcibly make a move on him, big young Master Suing, was probably more than 3 meters high. In any case, out of his responsibility to Teacher Pan, and even more so to the people around him, Wang Ling was even more certain of the necessity of brainwashing the entire nation on the night of the full moon. In the afternoon, Old Antique sent a WeChat message to gather everyone in number 59 high school's gymnasium. There were only 2 days left before the all-important Spirit Sword Exchange meet. As the lead teacher, Old Antique felt that it was necessary to have a proper training session. Number 59 high school's gymnasium was very big. For most foundation establishment high schools nowadays, the interior space of such a large venue was a completely different world. It didn't look very big from the outside, but the space inside had been expanded by a space expansion spell. In fact, spatial expansion was very common. Take for example the storage pocket on the school uniform, or Old Antique's snack drawer, which was the size of a supermarket's inventory. He was now very familiar with this technique of simply increasing space. It was completely used in daily life, and the biggest benefit was that it greatly reduced the price of real estate. Those real estate speculators who were hated by the people could no longer stir up trouble. Strange. Why isn't Mr. Wang here yet? They had already been waiting for a while in the separate training area, in number 59 high school's gymnasium. Lin Xiaoyu asked doubtfully. Everyone had the impression that Old Antique was a punctual man. Let's wait a little longer. Lotus Sun also frowned slightly, feeling very strange at the same time. Generally speaking, as long as Old Antique had agreed on a time, he would either arrive early or on the dot. He would never be so easily late. He wouldn't have encountered any trouble, would he? Feather Lin asked again. Lotus Sun was silent for a moment. She had personally witnessed Old Antique's strength. Furthermore, Old Antique's identity was a mystery. Even Huaguo Water Curtain Group couldn't find out his background. For such a man, it would be good if he didn't find trouble with others. Wang Ling was also silent for a moment. After carefully considering Feather Lin's words, he felt that there was actually nothing wrong with what this Fujoshi said. Because Old Antique had indeed encountered trouble. If having his luck in love could be considered trouble. While everyone was talking about Old Antique, speak of the devil, and he's here, outside the stadium. A broad figure was reflected on the ground. Dazzling sunlight slanted in from outside the door, elongating this already broad figure, and making it several body lengths taller. Although they couldn't see the face clearly, everyone knew who it was just from the area of the shadow on the ground. In the next moment, the shadow on the ground suddenly leaped up like a ghost, causing everyone to be dumbfounded. Then, in the midst of silence and astonishment, a huge fatty bounced up to them. Super Chun Hirogwa, Lotus Sun and Feather Lin were all stupefied. Now, it wasn't just Wang Ling. Even the others could see that Old Antique wasn't normal today. Old Antique's chubby little face was rosy, like a peach blossom in full bloom, and he looked radiant. It was as if everyone could see the sunshine seeping through the cracks of Old Antique's mouth as he grinned. It was really 2F*** King Radiant. Did he win the lottery? Or did he advance to the godlike pentakill? The corners of Super Chen's mouth twitched as an incomprehensible expression appeared on his face. He felt that he was a relatively insensitive person, but if he could tell at one glance that there was something wrong with Old Antique, then it wasn't just a simple problem. There really was a big problem. Of course, Wang Ling was probably the only one among the 60 high students present who knew why Old Antique was so happy. Unfortunately, Wang Ling didn't like gossip, so he kept his mouth shut about Old Antique. Master of Dopey couldn't hold it in. As number 60 high school's widely known gossipmonger and omniscient fortune-teller, this was the first time Hirogwa felt a sense of crisis, as if his own reputation was about to be destroyed. It seems that you don't know everything. Super Chin deliberately put on a teasing expression. Are you challenging me? Hirogwa raised his eyebrows. There was actually something he didn't know. It didn't exist. He raised his arm, and Dopey very consciously jumped down from Hirogwa's shoulder, then turned its head to peck at its pure white feathers. A normal parrot would imitate what it said from time to time, but Dopey was an intelligent parrot. According to Master of Dopey Hirogwa's own account, Dopey would only speak when he allowed it to, otherwise it wouldn't even dare fart. Everyone clearly didn't doubt his words at all, and Hirogwa was thus given the title of Master of Dopey. In everyone's eyes, this was probably the most outstanding pet that Master of Dopey had ever trained in the soul pet industry. Even you don't know about Old Antique, do you expect Dopey to tell you? Super Chin couldn't help laughing. Dopey, show this bastard what you've got. Don't lose face for our soul servant shop. Hirogwa pointed at Dopey and spat out saliva in excitement. The soul servant shop he mentioned was actually the name of his family's ancestral soul pet shop. Actually, from the moment he entered school, Wang Ling had realized that Dopey wasn't simple. Wang Ling had secretly given it another nickname, Ice Sculpture. Because it didn't like to talk, it didn't have many lines of dialogue until now, and maintained an emotionless and detached attitude all day long. Even when Wang Ling usually activated the mind-reading ability, he couldn't hear any of Dopey's thoughts, which was enough to show how aloof this parrot was. Until now, when Hirogwa's saliva sprayed on the pure white feathers that Dopey was so proud of, Dopey finally couldn't take it anymore. It rolled its eyes at Hirogwa in disgust, and then Wang Ling heard Dopey curse loudly in its heart. King retard. Don't you know I'm a neat freak? Hearing Dopey's thoughts for the first time, Wang Ling's heart was shaken. He never thought that Dopey's habit of not talking would actually break down in this situation, due to its own neat freak. It looked like this wasn't just a cold parrot, but also a parrot with a temper. Furthermore, Wang Ling could sense Dopey's undisguised and unpretentious arrogance. Perhaps this parrot's owner, the parrot expert Master of Dopey Hirogwa in everyone's impression. Chapter 41. The Great Blood Origin Spell was one of the 3,000 great spells that Wang Ling had mastered. Its proficiency level was medium. One of the branch abilities was called Blood Origin Tracing, which could accurately trace the origin of one's bloodline. To put it bluntly, it was a DNA test. In the spirit energy era, many people had in fact relied mostly on bloodline inheritance to pass down their legacies. The Great Blood Origin spell had been all the rage at that time, and cultivators had fearlessly ventured deep into the ancient tombs of older cultivators in search of their legacies, hoping to obtain a huge boost in realm strength in a short period of time. But now the state had already strictly prohibited this kind of legacies inheritance. This was because the risk of inheritance was very high, and there was also the possibility of contracting a blood disease. Back then, Huaxiao Nation's first-generation leaders had specially gathered these cultivators who had recklessly inherited their legacies together and held a condemnation meeting. The crime was called anti-chainism and opportunism. The leaders of the older generation had always felt that no matter how talented one was, one had to rely on oneself to accumulate cultivation step by step. Relying on crooked methods to cultivate definitely wasn't the right way. So after that, the Great Blood Origin spell had declined, and was strictly banned by the state as a forbidden spell. Apart from Wang Ling, who had learned it in his mother's womb, there were only a handful of people in the world who still knew this spell. Now, Wang Ling would occasionally use this spell to check on the talent of the people around him. Bloodlines were also a manifestation of talent. When he was a child, Wang Ling had always felt that there were people around him who were born with a golden spoon in their mouths. Unfortunately, to this day, Wang Ling hadn't found anyone of his kind. He had discovered the results of Dopey's blood origin tracing test when he entered school. Dopey wasn't an ordinary parrot. Even though it had hidden itself very well, Wang Ling had still discovered it. To be exact, it was a hybrid parrot of many noble bloodlines. Through the blood origin tracing, Wang Ling had seen the following species in Dopey's bloodline. Kuan Peng Ghost Car Chong Ming Vermilion Bird by Fong. Oh, that was right, there was also a Bobo. Who knew what Dopey's parents had experienced before it was born? Of course, Wang Ling didn't want to know. But the one thing he was sure of was that after mixing so many bloodlines, Dopey had also obtained a unique special ability. Normally, Hero Guo wouldn't show off Dopey's ability in public. Otherwise he would inevitably be suspected of performing acrobatics. But now that he had been questioned by Super Chun, Hero Guo felt that he needed to show his hand. He winked at two balls. The man and the bird had actually made an agreement a long time ago. Internally, there was a clear distinction between public and private affairs. Under the watchful eyes of the public, he still had to give face to the host. When he got home, as a shit-shoveling officer, Hero Guo had no choice but to let go of this master of dopey robe and pay the price of his public glory. Others might not know about this déjà vu between man and bird, but Wang Ling had already seen through it. It was just that he didn't want to say too much. It was worth mentioning that Dopey was female. Sorry to keep you waiting. Old Antique skipped cheerfully over to them. Before he could say a few words, his wristwatch rang again. He looked at the caller ID and immediately waved to everyone with a red face. I'm sorry, everyone wait for me. After that, he ran to the side to answer the phone. Such a lively Old Antique was beyond everyone's understanding. While Old Antique was on the phone, Wang Ling could figure out what on earth had happened to him. There's nothing in this world that I don't know. As he spoke, Hero Guo carefully plucked a feather from Dopey's body. The moment it was plucked, Dopey's white and slightly plump body visibly shuddered. What are you trying to do? Feather Lin asked, puzzled. This is a writing testing technique, and needs 2 eggs feather as support. As long as this master pinched the bird feather, stared at the fortune teller, and said the fortune teller's name 3 times. We'll know the result based on the color of the feathers, Hero Guo said mysteriously. Dopey silently rolled his eyes at Hero Guo. First you spit on my feather, and now you want me to cooperate with you in showing off. Hee, when we get back you'll suffer. In fact, how is this a writing test technique? Hero Guo made it sound like it was a marvelous technique. In general terms, it was fortune telling. The main point was that this ability wasn't Hero Guo's, but Dopey's own special ability. In Wang Ling's opinion, this ability, which was a combination of the bloodlines of several divine birds, was a little useless. But overall, the result of the calculation should be accurate. At the very least, it was much better than the charlatans who caught people on the side of the road and said, Benefactor, there's evil in between your eyebrows. You're bound to suffer a bloody calamity. Pinching the feather, Hero Guo silently said Old Antique's real name 3 times. Very quickly, everyone saw the originally white and flawless feather instantly turn pink. Pink feather? Hero Guo stared at the feather with an astonished expression. Lotus Sun gave the pink feather a cursory look and asked, Pink feather, what does it symbolize? Hero Guo had long since memorized the symbolic meaning of the color of a feather. But to be honest, he hadn't expected a feather of this color to appear on Old Antique. Thinking of Old Antique's jumping and cheering attitude earlier, as well as this crucial pink feather, the answer seemed to have already surfaced. The answer seemed to have floated out of the water. Pink feathers symbolize luck in love affairs. Old Antique, he's in love. Everyone was enlightened at first. Oh, so he's in love. After a moment of dead silence, there was an earth-shattering roar. What the hell? Dating? Love. Love. This 10,000-year-old Old Antique, who only knew how to eat spicy strips, had actually started to arrange flowers in his antique vase. Super Chun, Lotus Sun and Feather Lin all felt that this was inconceivable. Is your feather reliable? Superchin questioned again. F***K. You still don't believe me? I just think it's a little too fantastical. It doesn't make sense to think about fortune-telling with bird feathers, said Superchin. Wang Ling. So, do you think it's very scientific that bird feathers can change color? Superchin was someone who didn't believe in superstitions, and was very fond of getting into a dead end, especially when it came to feudal superstitions. To verify the authenticity of the feather's fortune-telling, Superchin unceremoniously pulled another feather from Dopey's body. This time, Dopey's balls twitched violently in pain. Gnashing its teeth, it looked at Hirogwa. Although it didn't have any teeth to gnash its teeth with, Dopey didn't care who had pulled the feather. In any case, it would be Hirogwa's fault in the end. Hirogwa. What do you want? Come on, our comrade Dopey Master. Find someone else to calculate it. Superchin handed the feather to Hirogwa. Hirogwa silently pursed his lips, then looked at Feather Lin. After silently saying her name 3 times, the feather turned dark red. After all, it was her own fortune and misfortune that was being calculated. So Feather Lin was a little nervous. What does this color represent? Hirogwa carefully identified the color of the feather, and quickly read the message. This red feather symbolizes drawing fire to your body. You have to worry about fire in the near future. Stay away from places with fires for the time being. Feather Lin had an incredulous look on her face. This is too accurate. Just last week, the gay doujinshi that she had painstakingly collected for many years was discovered by her father and burned to ashes. Superchin didn't believe it, and plucked another feather from Dopey's body. Come on, calculate mine. This feather was on Dopey's belly, where the flesh was the most tender, and it hurt so much that all its feathers stood on end. Wang Ling even saw a crystalline tear in the corner of Dopey's eye. Helplessly helping Superchin calculate it again, Hirogwa found that the feather had turned azure blue. He sighed and said, You have to stay away from water for the next month. Superchin also had an incredulous look on his face. As expected, it's very accurate. Last week, Superchin remembered that he had been swimming in the swimming pool when his foot had cramped. If it hadn't been for the lifeguard, who had intervened in time, and split open the water with a palm, Superchin felt that it would have been game over for him. Do you believe me now? Hirogwa felt quite helpless. At that moment, Old Antique came back from a long phone conversation, looking even more radiant than before. Students, I have some news for you. Standing in front of everyone, Old Antique didn't hide his wild joy at all. I found you a teacher's wife. Everyone. Wang Ling. So, what was the point of plucking the feather earlier? Chapter 42. Wang Ling hadn't expected Old Antique to announce the news so soon. There were a lot of flash marriages these days, but he hadn't expected there to be so many flash relationships as well. Wang Ling felt that Old Antique might have been unable to extricate himself from the river of love, because he had been lacking love for too long. It was obvious that spring had arrived for Old Antique. On the other side, Hirogwa had also entered the cold winter season. Dopey wasn't an ordinary parrot. This wasn't only reflected in its special abilities after mixing various bloodlines, but also in its ability to transform. Dopey could transform, even though it could only maintain its human form for a limited time. But it was enough to train Hirogwa, especially when Dopey saw that a small part of its pristine white feathers, which it was so proud of, had actually been plucked off because of this damn fortune-telling. Wang Ling could feel the low pressure coming from Hirogwa's shoulder, even from afar. Furthermore, he could hear Dopey's thoughts again. Whip, handcuffs, small candle, hiss. Although it was just 3 short nouns, it was already enough for Wang Ling's imagination to run wild. Wang Ling had never thought that playing with a bird could be so exciting nowadays. When in love, Old Antique was even more amiable than usual. This should have been a stress-free spirit sword training session. But Hirogwa's expression was deeply immersed in Dopey's cold pressure the entire time, and he couldn't lift his spirits no matter what. The lesson of this story was that there was a price to pay for posturing. If you wanted to show off in front of others, a bird would drop wax on you behind your back. Wang Ling felt that through this incident, father and mother Wang had once again instilled in him a good example of how to be a low-key person. As always, Wang Ling felt that the spirit sword training session this time was very boring. What Old Antique taught was a very basic beginner spirit sword course. In theory, a foundation establishment cultivator could fly a sword. But according to the current education system, Huaxiao Nation's General Administration of Education had moved flying a sword to universities. In high school, the vast majority of foundation establishment high school students would be exposed to basic maintenance of spirit swords and basic flying swords. Of course, as students of the elite class, they might also be exposed to more in-depth content, such as advanced sword techniques and swordsmanship manuals and so on. But for Wang Ling, these lessons still weren't challenging at all. As the saying goes, a true expert doesn't have a sword in his hand, but a sword in his heart. Even a blade of grass can cut through the stars, the sun, and the moon. This kind of highest level of swordsmanship had already been recorded in the annals of history, and most people thought that it was just a legend. But Wang Ling felt that if the Dao Talisman seal was completely undone, it wouldn't be difficult for him to cut a star with a blade of grass. The basic sword manipulation training was mainly to control one's spirit sword to draw the figure 8 in the air. Wang Ling carefully controlled his small wooden sword and restrained his strength as he did his best to hold back, for fear that he would accidentally blow off the roof of the stadium. In the end, thanks to Old Antique's strict grading, Wang Ling's proficiency in the sword control technique was rated 4th out of everyone. Although he was ranked 4th out of the 5, he was still very satisfied with this ranking. The person ranked last was Feather Lin. The mother-child sword was not easy to control in the first place. The mental cultivation method and the imperial sword technique were twice as difficult as holding the sword with one hand. What was more, Feather Lin had misunderstood the gender of her 2 spirit swords over the years. So although they had gone through a long period of getting used to each other, the fact was that the development of their rapport had always been delayed. "We can't go on like this." Old Antique put his hands on his hips and sighed, feeling a headache coming on. Although Old Antique, who was madly in love, was a little unusual, he didn't idle around to collect data from the previous spirit sword exchange meet between number 59 High School and number 58 High School. On paper, students from the 3 schools actually had about the same level of control over their spirit swords. In fact, number 60 High School had an advantage because Lotus Sun's mysterious sea had already given birth to a sword spirit. To use an old saying from Chinibyu, high school students who had given birth to a sword spirit were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns in all 100 schools, and were terrifying existences. However, the Spirit Sword Exchange meet was a team event and used a team grading system. If number 60 High School wanted to win in this exchange meet, apart from Lotus Sun and Super Chun, who were currently performing the best, the other 3 had to at least ensure that their final grades were at or above the average. If one of them held them back, the result would be disastrous. It was worth mentioning that although Wang Ling was ranked 4th, his grades were stuck at the city average. Old Antique felt that this was very miraculous. In some sense, Old Antique felt that someone who scored 60 was more capable than someone who scored 100. But at the moment, it looked like Feather Lin was the only one holding them back, and the grades didn't look good. The city average score for the Imperial Sword Technique was 65, and Feather Lin hadn't even reached the passing mark. But Old Antique was Old Antique. Since Headmaster Chun had sent Old Antique to lead the team, even if this fatty who only knew how to eat snacks was currently having a bad time, his teaching ability was unquestionable. After that, except for Feather Lin, everyone else left the gym. There were still 2 hours before dinner. These 2 hours were supposed to be free time, but Feather Lin would have to work overtime to train. "Teacher, am I hopeless?" This Fujoshi was obviously very vexed as she lowered her head deeply. Feather Lin felt that flying a sword had become the second most painful experience in her life, after those gay doujinshi had been burned. Girls were thin-skinned, and Old Antique had to leave them some face. If it had been Teacher Pan's teaching style, she would have long since broken out in a torrent of abuse, and used all kinds of radical goading methods to stimulate the students' adrenaline. But every teacher had their own teaching style. This kind of reprimanding and goading method didn't suit Old Antique's gentle style at all. Moreover, this was Old Antique who was madly in love. It was even more impossible for him to reprimand a female student who had been thwarted on the road to learning. Compared with Teacher Pan's goading method, Old Antique was better at encouraging education. Furthermore, he was very good at prescribing the right medicine. Flying a pair of mother and child swords was indeed a lot more troublesome than using a one-handed sword. But the principle was the same. The students just had to memorize a few more formulas. For students in the elite class, memorizing books had never been difficult, not to mention that Feather Lynn herself was a top student. Hence, Old Antique felt that it wasn't that Feather Lynn couldn't learn, but that she couldn't get into it. Furthermore, Old Antique could see that Feather Lynn was in a very low mood. In fact, the pile of collectible gay doujinshi that had been burned a while ago was the main culprit behind Feather Lynn's mood. But Old Antique didn't know anything about this at all, and could only judge based on his many years of experience and observation. After all, investigating a student's privacy in private was quite perverted behavior. In a situation like this, Old Antique had a lot of ways to deal with this kind of difficult and complicated problem. In any case, he just had to give her what she liked. Spirit light flashed in Old Antique's hand, and a book appeared. He handed Feather Lynn a book that he had prepared beforehand. I hope Student Lynn will take a good look at this book. The main character's name is very similar to that of your mother and child swords. Feather Lynn took the book curiously, and saw the 4 words Founder of Devil Path elegantly written on the cover. Actually, before this group training, Old Antique had already thoughtfully prepared gifts for everyone in accordance with his motivational method as an emergency incentive. For Lotus Sun, he had compiled a list of Wang Ling's favorite snacks. For Super Chun, he had prepared a dumbbell with a gravity system, so that he could control its weight at will. For Hirogwa, he had prepared a small notebook that recorded student gossip that only Old Antique knew. Chapter 43. As the wind rustled on campus, there was a storm everywhere. Senior with a total score of 8,823 in 3 years. Senior delinquent. Senior buffing. Senior Fengyan. At some point in time, he buffing's titles and legends had started to circulate in the school. Even he buffing himself didn't know when on earth he had been called a delinquent. Perhaps it had been 3 years ago, after his passionate first love in high school had ended? He buffing couldn't remember it at all, and didn't care. Since he was already regarded as a school bully and delinquent, he buffing felt that sometimes breaking a jar was also a way of freeing himself. Ever since he became a delinquent, he buffing discovered that he could enter any restroom in the school as he pleased. Only after he was done peeing would the other students dare to use the restroom with trepidation. The cafeteria auntie always scooped the most meat for his meals. Everyone in the school was afraid of him. Even the teachers, even Director Xia, who always had a straight face, retreated far away when she saw him. To be honest, he buffing had hated this kind of life where everyone avoided him like a snake or scorpion. But gradually, he buffing began to learn how to enjoy it. What he buffing hadn't expected was that Tang Jingze would come looking for him this morning. This man, who had previously caused the teachers and students from number 58 high school to lose their wits, had actually humbly come looking for him, and begged him to teach those excessive guys a lesson. These 4 people? In the men's washroom, he buffing threw away the cigarette, but in his hand, and stomped it hard under his foot. At the same time, he stared at the photos and relevant information that Tang Jingze had given him. That's them. Tang Jingze replied weakly. Fang Huaqing and Liang Wei shrank behind Tang Jingze, not even daring to breathe loudly. This delinquent senior was indeed as scary as the rumors said. I remember that there were 5 student representatives from number 60 high school this time. You crossed out that Lotus Sun? What are you looking down on me? You think I can't handle her? He buffing looked at the information in his hand and smiled. It was a simple question, but Tang Jingze shuddered. Don't be afraid. He buffing patted Tang Jingze on the shoulder. After all, she's the young miss of Huagua Water Curtain Group, Not just anyone can provoke her. What Senior said makes sense. However, my time is limited. I can only help you teach one person a lesson at most. He buffing pointed at the photo. First of all, I don't have the habit of bullying women. This Feather Lin can go first. And, Senior sure has a good demeanor. Liang Wei flattered. Then he buffing pointed at Super Chun. Secondly, this muscular brother looks very hard to deal with. I didn't want to have a philosophical wrestling match with him, while I was teaching him a lesson. According to the information, this person's family seems to have some background. I think we should dispense with it. Then, he buffing pointed at Master of Dopey in the photo. And this one, he looks very silly. But his family runs a spirit pet shop, and I feel that the parrot in his hand is not easy to deal with. Finally, he buffing turned his gaze to Wang Ling from the data. This guy seems to be the easiest to bully, right? That's him. Senior, are you sure you don't want to reconsider? After leaving the gym, it was up to Wang Ling to allocate the rest of his free time. Old Antique had made Feather Lin stay in the gym to read founder of Devil Path. Lotus Sun had taken advantage of the fact that the students at number 59 high school were still in class to run to the school rooftop and try to summon the sword spirit to improve their rapport. Super Chun and Hirogwa, these two unmotivated fellows, had scampered back to the school dormitory to play games as soon as they came out of the training camp. Wang Ling didn't need to train, and he didn't play games often, because any equipment in his hands could easily be scrapped. Of course, the wristwatch which Wang Ming had specially developed for him actually contained games. Furthermore, the game library was updated every Monday and included almost all the latest games on the market. But Wang Ling had never played a single game before, because the various numerical values generated during the game could indirectly reflect his reaction, agility and so on. Wang Ling didn't want that data freak to get hold of any clues about him. Wang Ling had always felt that he was actually a very boring person, and that he had always been a loner since he was a child. Of course, this had to do with father and mother Wang's education. There were many times when Wang Ling thought that if he didn't have this realm and strength, he would just be the most ordinary person in the end. The heavens gave everyone a chance, and also gave everyone equality. The price he had to pay for this unparalleled realm and strength was also very painful. Wang Ling couldn't enjoy games happily. He couldn't make friends who were especially close to him. He couldn't high-five his buddies when he was happy. And he had to tremble with fear even when he sneezed or slept. He had to control his strength at all times and do his best to guard against accidental injuries. This wasn't just a responsibility to himself, but also to others. Wang Ling's deepest childhood shadow had probably been loneliness when he was young. But as he gradually grew older, he had gradually gotten used to being alone. Life seemed to have become a lot livelier after coming to number 60 high school, especially the activities outside the school these past few days, which made Wang Ling feel very uncomfortable and unaccustomed to living in a group, which he had never experienced before. For Wang Ling, this free time was really a rare opportunity for him to have some peace and quiet on his own. How did that song go again? Take a walk with me on the streets of the school, so dirty, so dirty. Whether it was number 59 high school or number 58 high school, which was passed down by word of mouth, there was a place similar to number 60 high school's small garden. After number 59 high school had been expanded by that pretentious school director, in addition to the wide tree-lined path in front of the school gate and the new school building, a piece of land had also been expanded behind the school building. It was a cherry blossom forest full of cherry trees. It was the cherry blossom season now, and the forest was dyed pink by the cherry blossoms. Being in the middle of it gave off the feeling of first love. After school at number 59 high school, you could always see some young couples making vows of love under the cherry blossom trees. Chapter 44. Wang Ling reached out to pick up a petal, closed his eyes and breathed carefully, savoring the fragrance of the pale pink petals. The fragrance of this season was just right for Wang Ling. These were just ordinary cherry trees, compared with the various spirit fruit trees sold on the market, which were grown from spirit tree seeds. Cherry trees themselves didn't have any spirit chi, but they were still an indispensable part of the construction of the school environment. This was the kind of life he wanted to live. Wang Ling very much enjoyed this rare tranquility. Standing silently in the cherry blossom forest, he savored the pure fragrance and closed his eyes, as if he was the only person left in the entire universe. Suddenly, Wang Ling's body trembled again, and he actually shivered. Of course, it wasn't because he was cold from the wind, but because his muscles were spasming for some reason. His body didn't feel cold, and he was immune to all poisons. Any virus that entered his body would be disintegrated by powerful spirit energy molecules. Thus, Wang Ling had never been sick since he was a child, and didn't even know what a cold felt like. Of course, he would occasionally have a muscle spasm, which often happened when Wang Ling was feeling tranquil. It had nothing to do with his body, but was related to his nerves. Even though he stood at the pinnacle of human cultivators in terms of realm, not everyone could understand how lonely it was to be at the top. The immortal king wasn't an old man who prayed in a rundown temple all day long, nor was he a Taoist priest who had seen through the world of mortals. When all was said and done, Wang Ling was just a 16-year-old teenager, and he also had emotions. Although he said that he was already used to it, in his heart, he was unwilling to admit that he was in fact too lonely. Wang Ling stepped on the soft cherry blossom petals as he slowly walked forward. The cool wind brushed his cheeks, and he heard some subtle sounds in the air. Following the sounds, he looked in the direction in front of him. Not far away, several kittens were playing happily under a cherry blossom tree, jumping and pouncing on the falling petals. These were ordinary stray cats, which could be found on every campus. Sometimes, Wang Ling was quite envious of these little things. They were carefree and didn't need to worry. When they were hungry, there would always be a school poop scooper who would come forward to give them food. When they were full, they could play in groups, and when they were tired, they could continue to lie down and sleep lazily. They didn't need to worry about restraining their strength. Staring at these cute little guys, he really wanted to reach out and pick one up. But considering that the effect of the talisman seal was weakening, he finally withdrew his hand. Under the cherry blossom tree, a beautiful boy was happily playing with a few cats. This was supposed to be a beautiful scene where humans and nature coexisted in harmony. But sometimes this kind of harmony would be broken, especially when a person knew the mind-reading ability. As he looked at the kittens, he could clearly hear their thoughts. The big cat in the lead said, "Look, this person has been staring at us." Two cats said, "He might be a pervert." Tri-cat said, "Let's go. He seemed to be trying to grab us just now." Four cat, "I heard that there was a pervert who specialized in catching cats to make skewers out of. It's very dangerous here." Big cat, "It's exactly 2 o'clock. Boss Jingtan has a meeting to attend. Let's go, let's go." Wang Ling. Then, the few cats scattered in one direction. Wang Ling had experienced this kind of embarrassment many times since he was a child, especially when the talisman seal was weakened. His aura was a lot heavier than before, and animals and insects were usually much more sensitive to this kind of dangerous aura than humans. However, not all creatures were afraid of Wang Ling. Occasionally, a few reckless dragonflies and butterflies would perch on his shoulders and hair. Wang Ling continued in the direction in which the kittens had fled. Number 59 High School's cherry blossom garden had a small artificial lotus pond, which couldn't be considered very large. When Wang Ling had entered number 59 High School before, he had heard someone talk about it through his mind-reading ability. This small lotus pond had also been newly built, but there had been a small incident a while ago when a sparrow had accidentally fallen into the water and drowned. A student who liked to cause trouble had named the sparrow Xiaoyuha, and then had paid for a stone tablet to be erected on the side, and named the small lotus pond Xiaoming Lakeside. Wang Ling was a little worried that something might happen to the kittens, so he decided to follow them to take a look. These little guys were still too young. Although the water in the lotus pond didn't even reach Wang Ling's knees, it was already deep enough for them. But it turned out that Wang Ling had been overthinking things. This group of kittens clearly had their own secret base. When Wang Ling arrived at Xiaoming Lakeside, it was very quiet, and there wasn't even the shadow of a cat in sight. Wang Ling sighed and was about to leave when he suddenly heard a meow from the cherry blossom tree next to him, and then saw a black shadow fall into the lotus pond. Plop! A huge splash of water. Wang Ling was pretty close to the lotus pond. Under normal circumstances, if he didn't react in time, he would definitely be drenched. But before these splashing water droplets could get close to Wang Ling, they were all frozen in midair. Then, he moved his fingers, and like a receding tide, the water that had splashed up returned to the lotus pond without a single drop left behind. After doing all this, Wang Ling secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Because he had lost control of his spirit energy these days, he had damaged a lot of things at number 59 high school, from a spirit gathering array to a small electronic product. Actually, Wang Ling still felt very guilty. In any case, the water in the lotus pond was public property of the school, and Wang Ling felt that he had saved the day in time. This wasn't time backtracking, but the great gravitational spell, one of the 3,000 magical powers. The sucking palm, that had once become famous in the year of the Shao clan's leader's debut, had been partially based on the principle of this magical power. Of course, he could achieve the same effect by using time backtracking, but it would also consume a lot of Wang Ling's spirit energy. The most important thing was that after time backtracking, the world line would jump. So unless it was absolutely necessary, Wang Ling didn't want to use this ability lightly. Standing next to the small lotus pond, Wang Ling's eyes searched for the black shadow that had fallen into the pond just now. Although it had only happened for a split second, Wang Ling was still able to rely on his terrifying dynamic vision to determine that this thing was probably a black cat. It was obvious that this black cat had been a little startled. After all, it had deliberately jumped in from here and wanted to splash this person with water. After jumping into the water, the black cat had immediately scuttled to the side, hid by the lotus pond, and started to observe in secret. Then, it had seen the entire process of Wang Ling using the great gravitational spell. I never thought that this person would actually know such an advanced spell. He had formulated a series of plans to mess with Wang Ling, but had never thought that he would fail at the first round. What a bad start. He Buffung, who had turned into a black cat, sighed in his heart. He jumped onto a lotus leaf in the lotus pond from one side. After all, it was an artificial lotus pond. Everything from the lotus flowers to the lotus leaves were fake. Moreover, the buoyancy was very strong. It was like a kickboard used for swimming training, so he Buffing could step on the lotus leaf steadily. This wasn't the first time he Buffing had turned into a cat, so he was quite agile. After all, the way he moved was different from his 2 feet to his 4 limbs. It was really hard to get used to it without some practice. And so this black cat officially entered Wang Ling's line of sight. After a brief confrontation between man and cat, he Buffing jumped off the lotus leaf. With a 360-degree Thomas full spin, he plunged into the water. Then he started to struggle with all his might. Even if Wang Ling didn't use the mind-reading ability, he knew that this guy had done it on purpose. What was more, Wang Ling now knew very clearly that this black cat was actually a human, and had been sent by Tang Jingzi to mess with him. Given the current situation, if he tried to save Wang Ling, there would definitely be some other crafty plot. If he ignored it, Wang Ling felt that the other party would definitely accuse him of not saving someone in danger. Furthermore, it would very likely affect number 60 High's reputation. After all, Old Antique had said that every person who came to number 59 high school represented number 60 high school. Of course he had to save him. However, it was necessary to give him a bit of punishment. Chapter 45. Ever since Wang Ling had personally witnessed Old Antique's art mode with his own eyes, he had also started to sort out his own passive skills. Because sometimes, especially for Wang Ling, trouble wasn't just caused by his inability to suppress his strength. Sometimes his own passive skills were the root of the problem. Thus, over the last 2 days, Wang Ling had actually quietly divided his passive skills into 3 categories: the practical series, the chicken rib series, and the useless series. It could be said that they were simple and clear at a glance. Among the useless series, Wang Ling's deepest impression was a passive branch spell from the 3000 great spells called Great Wave Palm called Carp Jump. As long as Wang Ling applauded a person 32 times in a row, that person would act like the Carp King when it used Water Splash, and jump around on the spot without any attack. Then, there was the Chicken Rib series. From the name of this series of passive skills, it was obvious that they were tasteless but a pity to discard. Some skills seemed very practical, but for Wang Ling, they were worthless. For example, Wang Ling's Infinite Devour passive branch spell from the 3000 great spells was the Great Devouring spell. As long as Wang Ling dropped his tears on food, the food would quickly split into mini portions in a short period of time. 1 became 2, 2 became 4. Unfortunately, Wang Ling wasn't a foodie. He just had a soft spot for crispy noodle snacks. Wang Ling remembered that when he had used this spell to duplicate crispy noodle snacks as a child, the number of crispy noodle snacks had increased uncontrollably. At that time, Wang Ling could only open up a tunnel and send these spell-enhanced crispy noodle snacks into the vast universe. Now, these crispy noodle snacks could probably already form a galaxy. Thus, although Wang Ling had a lot of passive skills, most of them weren't very practical. As for the practical skill series, although his skill pool was pitifully small, they were all skills that Wang Ling thought would be very useful for hiding his realm. For example, the Great Shielding spell from before. This spell's passive ability blocked the possibility of criminals investigating him through other channels. And now, in the face of this black cat movie emperor flopping around in the pool, Wang Ling's other passive skill had unknowingly been activated. His heavenly eye had the ability to separate the false from the true. To be honest, even Wang Ling hadn't expected that there would actually be someone in a foundation establishment high school who knew how to use the transformation spell. This was a fairly advanced spell. Although the general administration of 100 schools didn't forbid the study of transformation techniques, based on the complexity of transformation techniques alone, it was basically nonsense for a foundation establishment cultivator to learn them on their own without the guidance of a famous teacher. At this time, Black Cat Movie King had been flopping around in the lotus pond for a full 2 minutes. In the face of such a delicate and pitiful kitten, this person actually had no sympathy at all. This was what he Buffing thought. He had already placed that punk underling of his in the vicinity. If Wang Ling did anything but watch someone die, this underling would immediately take a photo and leave behind evidence of his inaction. The next day, it would flood the school's tieba and all the major forums. This little bit of news, as long as it was complemented with a slightly sentimental article, it would definitely cause a bunch of shit-shoveling officials to become agitated and form a joint crusade. At that time, number 60 high school would definitely lose all face. But the premise of the entire plan was that the transformation technique must be flawless. The black cat was still flopping around merrily in the lotus pond. Wang Ling stared at the black cat. No one noticed that its deep, obsidian-like pupils were blossoming, with a different kind of splendor like a kaleidoscope. It had to be said that He Bufing's transformation technique was quite superb. To be able to do this, he could definitely escape the detection of most people at the same realm as him. But unfortunately, a mere transformation technique couldn't escape the judgment of the heavenly eye at all. While He Bufing was happily flopping around in the lotus pond, he was surprised to find that the water around him seemed to have become a lot bigger, and his field of view had changed dramatically. Even the black fur on his hands seemed to have disappeared. Strange. This situation seemed a little off then. After a few short seconds, He Bufing stood up in the lotus pond with a stupefied expression on his face. Even his drenched little brother stood up valiantly and energetically. K. He Bufing had never thought that he would turn back into a human. And what terrified He Bufing the most was that even his clothes were gone. Wang Ling covered his eyes, which were stinging from the heat, and at the same time, he cursed in his heart. Who could tell him? Why the hell had He Bufing's clothes disappeared? Getting rid of the fake and keeping the real was a little King thorough. It was a little painful to the eyes. There had to be a bug somewhere, right? This was an unexpected awkwardness for Wang Ling. He was a little regretful. The Heavenly Eye's passive skill wasn't something he could control. The ability to get rid of the fake and keep the real was indeed very good, and could help him identify a lot of false illusions. But it was clear that sometimes it wasn't a good thing to restore the real too thoroughly. At that moment, Buffing felt a little crazy and a little desperate. It was like using a transformation potion in a game, only to find out that all your top-notch equipment had been swallowed by the system. Furthermore, the feeling of his eggs getting cold in the wind gave him a sense of melancholy. Buffing covered his face and sank back into the lotus pond. He had never felt so ashamed before. There was no one around, and that punk little brother was still lurking in the distance, completely unaware of what was going on in front of him. Buffing braced himself and said to Wang Ling in a slightly pleading tone, "Classmate, can you help me find some clothes?" Wang Ling. After thinking for a moment, Wang Ling took off his coat and threw it on the side of the lotus pond. Then, he lowered his head and silently turned to leave. After all, he wasn't Super Chun, and there was no way he would be interested in a naked bro. A youngster with a buzz cut, who had a slightly melancholy temperament, was walking in the cherry blossom forest. Buffing watched Wang Ling's back as he sat in the cold lotus pond in a daze. He hadn't expected his transformation technique to fail so quickly, and even more so, he hadn't expected that the guy he was supposed to mess with would instead help him out at his most embarrassing moment. Crawling out of the lotus pond with a face full of shame, Buffing put on the blue coat that Wang Ling had given him. The sports uniform was longer than normal clothes, and it was just enough to cover Buffing's most embarrassing parts. It was a good thing that school wasn't over yet. Otherwise there would be more people in the cherry blossom forest, and he would really be embarrassed. "Boss, it's all recorded." That punk little brother scuttled out from the side. F***K. What the hell is there to record? Delete it all. Buffing's face twitched as he recalled how he had seemed to be happily splashing water in the lotus pond when he had just turned into a human. Buffing felt like a retard. How could he keep this kind of video? Then this person, should we still mess with him? We should raise our hands to welcome such a student from another school, with such a righteous view of the world. If it wasn't for this classmate Lei Feng, I would have completely lost face. As Buffing spoke, he took off the punk little brother's pants and put them on. The breeze brushed against his bare thighs and light leg hair, making the punk little brother feel a little aggrieved. I'll have to thank this classmate Lei Feng later. Buffing sighed, thinking of Tang Jingzi and this bunch of people who craved for the world to be in chaos. He deeply felt the difference in quality between the students of the two schools. Buffing felt that he couldn't continue to fall like this. Number 59 High School Student Union had to be properly reorganized. The two of them stared in the direction that Wang Ling had disappeared in for a long time. Then unknowingly, Wang Ling's great shielding spell came into play again. Almost at the same time, both of them realized an important problem. F***K. Wait a minute. This classmate Lei Feng. What the F***K was his name again? Chapter 46. Wang Ling absolutely wasn't someone who liked to play the role of Lei Feng. Buffing had brought this upon himself. Wang Ling could ignore it and swagger away, but what father and mother Wang had taught him from a young age was that there should be a bottom line in everything you did. Leave a way out for everything, and it would be easier to meet again in the future. Although Buffing was a delinquent, in the end, he wasn't like that bunch of heinous human-headed dogs from Shadowstream. Thus, in the end, Wang Ling had decided to keep the school uniform after considering the relationship between the two schools. Everyone knew that the relationship between number 59 High School and number 60 High School wasn't good. But when will there be an end to revenge? He didn't know what a mere school uniform could change, but he thought it was worth a try. After all, even number 59 High School's most troublesome director Xia had been won over by Old Antique. Anything was possible. Over at number 59 High School, someone's balls turned cold as the wind blew past their buttocks. Elsewhere, in the office of the General Administration of 100 schools, Audiobook was feeling very sad today. In the eyes of outsiders, Audiobook who had become the deputy director of the general administration of 100 schools at such a young age, was undoubtedly an enviable existence. But no one knew that the pressure on Audjua himself was considerable. On one hand, this pressure came from the leader. The general administration of 100 schools controlled all the cultivation schools in Songhai City, including kindergartens. The education bureaus of the major districts had to listen to the direct deployment of the general administration of 100 schools. And above the general administration of 100 schools was the alliance of 10,000 schools. It was under the direct jurisdiction of Secretary Sun Dakong, a leading cadre of the central government. The position of deputy director was neither a big nor a small one. But from Audjua's point of view, sitting in this position was to receive guests. The director had reaped all the benefits, while he himself could only answer calls in the office. The pressure of a leader directly led to pressure at work, which made Audjua feel even more bitter. On the other hand, the pressure also came from Audjua himself. Audjua was well aware of how he had gotten his position as deputy director. Furthermore, the most terrifying thing was that at the annual meeting every year, a few drunk leaders would drag him along to perform the sky-parting sword move he had used to kill the sky-swallowing toad back then. In short, Audjua felt very tired sitting in the position of deputy director. Due to the issue of their children's enrollment, many parents came to him to petition. The child's education was a major issue, and there was no way Audjua wouldn't help. Of course, there were also quite a few parents who sent him red packets in private, but he didn't accept any of them. Audjua felt that although he couldn't be rated as an honest and clean model worker, at least he could be considered an honest and upright person. He actually wanted to report his leader and throw caution to the wind. However, he did not have any evidence on hand, especially after the Anti-Corruption Department of Huaxiao Nation's Central Cultivation Bureau had issued 8 regulations and 6 prohibitions. All the leading officials had started to restrain themselves and no longer indulged in debauchery. There wasn't even a single dish at the banquet. The leaders took out abalone-flavored fasting pills from their pockets and put them in their mouths. Then, they began to drink tea and chat. Thus, it was even more impossible for Audjua to find any evidence. Ever since No. 60 High School's crushing defeat of the world-class killer organization Shadowstream, it had aroused widespread discussion in society. For the Spirit Sword exchange meet between No. 59 High School and No. 60 High School this time, the leaders of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools had personally called Audjua to express their fervent interest and concern. In fact, the most important thing was Lotus Sun's safety. After the assassination attempt by Shadowstream, it was said that the big boss of Huagua Water Curtain Group had directly called the central government. Audjua didn't know exactly what they had talked about. But after that, the leaders of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools had personally called Audjua to inquire about all of Lotus Sun's activities at school. Just this morning, Audjua had personally received a call from the higher-ups. Over the phone, Audjua could guess the content of the conversation. It was most likely about safety. Shadowstream had lost so many first-class killers this time, and they definitely wouldn't let it go so easily. The Spirit Sword exchange meet between the two schools would be attended by leaders at all levels, and there would be many eyes and eyes. If security measures weren't in place, problems would inevitably arise. In fact, Audjua had been sending people to keep an eye on them for the last 2 days, for fear that something would go wrong. If this job wasn't in place, the first person to get into trouble would be him, the deputy director who had assigned the task. Receiving guests and taking the blame. It sounded a little sad, but this was in fact the problem Audjua was facing right now. It wasn't just his job, but also his current situation. That morning, right after the call with the leaders of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools, an unusual guest arrived at Audjua's office in the afternoon. This person was very tall, and wore a black windbreaker that fitted him just right and a motorcycle helmet. At first glance, he didn't look like a big shot. But the moment he pushed open the office door, Audjua was completely dumbfounded and almost cursed in his heart. Secretary Dakong? Sun Dakong, Director of Huaxiao Nation's General Education Administration, Secretary of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools. This old leader with an unfathomable realm was a figure whose every step he took in Jingzhou City. Ajwa hadn't had any direct contact with this legendary old leader, and had only seen him from afar at previous annual meetings. To be honest, Ajwa had a very deep impression of Secretary Dakong, so he had recognized the visitor at one glance. It was said that Secretary Sun Dakong was a very low-key person in private, and seeing him today, it really was as the rumors said F***K, a black windbreaker and a helmet. If one didn't know better, they would think it was takeout. Sun Dakong put down his motorcycle helmet and sat down unceremoniously in the guest chair as he sighed faintly. It's been so many years, but this place really hasn't changed at all. His voice was magnetic, and even more so had the tone of an old leader, and his words had a special charm to them. There were usually a lot of parents who came to the office to petition, and Ajwa had almost run out of tea leaves. He opened the jars, but didn't find anything good, and was instantly a little embarrassed. Sun Dakong smiled at Ajwa. No need to trouble Deputy Director Zhua, tea will do. I came uninvited today, so it's fine as long as Deputy Director Zhua doesn't blame me. Ajwa hurriedly poured Sun Dakong a cup of herbal tea. What are you saying, Secretary Dakong? If there's a problem, just give me a call. This is a special line for the people. I don't have this right. Sun Dakong chuckled. So I came in person today. I've already made arrangements for student Lotus Sun's safety. If you're worried, Secretary Dakong, that's not why I came to see you today. Sun Dakong waved his hand. With Deputy Director Zhua taking care of student Lotus Sun's safety, of course we can rest assured. The higher-ups have seen Deputy Director Zhua's achievements in the alliance of 100 schools in Songhai City over the years. A few days ago, if Deputy Director Zhua hadn't personally planned and arranged for the defense of number 60 high school to defeat Shadow Stream, I'm afraid that it would have been the biggest terrorist attack in the history of our Huaxiao Nation's education sector. If it hadn't been for Deputy Director Zhua, it would have been very hard to predict the consequences. Ajwa. Then why did Secretary Dakong come to see me today? Number 60 High School's Spirit Sword Exchange meet is in 2 days. This time, I'll be there as a spectator on behalf of the higher-ups. I suddenly thought of this yesterday, and haven't told anyone before. It shouldn't be too late for me to come here and report to Deputy Director Zhua, right? Of course, it's enough for Deputy Director Zhua to keep this to himself. Give me an identity to participate in the event in the name of the General Administration of 100 schools. If too many people are alarmed, there's no point in mobilizing everyone. Sun Dakong spoke frankly with assurance, his expression extremely gentle. In short, it's just one sentence. Keep a low profile. Old leader, what are you talking about? Ajwa wiped at his cold sweat. He could already make the connection. If word of this king got out, all the leaders of number 59 high school and number 60 high school would go crazy. Furthermore, it wouldn't just be the school leaders. It might even directly alarm the leaders at the bureau level, and even the municipal level. Sun Dakong. This person's name was really too resounding. Forget about anything else, just the fact that his identity was revealed. People would tremble when they heard it. In the past, this secretary of the Alliance of 10,000 Schools had been one of the 10 most meritorious figures in the founding of Huaxiao Nation. He was an old general who had fought bravely on the ancient Cultivation battlefield and made great contributions to the creation of the scientific cultivation era. At this thought, Ajwa's expression couldn't help drifting. Such a figure was actually going to participate in a spirit sword exchange meet between 2 ordinary high schools? Ajwa felt that this was really too inconceivable. Apart from this, there's one more thing. Sun Dakong sipped his tea. I wonder if Deputy Director Zhua still remembers the demon rampage 6 years ago? Chapter 47. Every time Ajwa heard about the demon rampage 6 years ago, he couldn't help trembling. Every year at the annual meeting, those drunk leaders would drag him along to perform the sky-parting sword. Ajwa's psychological shadow was already higher than the sky and deeper than the sea. So when he heard Sun Dakong bring up the past again, Ajwa could almost guess what Secretary Dakong was going to say next. Sure enough, this old leader, who had quite a personality, glanced at Ajwa and smiled. I heard that Deputy Director Zhua's sky-parting sword is a unique skill. Why don't you show it off on the day of the Spirit Sword Exchange meet? For a very long time, Ajwa was silent and didn't say anything. In the past, when those drunk old leaders had asked him to perform at the annual meetings, it had been very easy for him to find an excuse to refuse. After all, they had been a bunch of delirious drunkards. But now that the person sitting in front of him was making such a request, Ajwa really couldn't find a reason to refuse. First, he didn't dare. Second, he really didn't know how to do it. All these years, Ajwa had done a lot of research on the sky-parting sword. But until now, he hadn't come up with any results. What, is there a problem? Seeing that Ajwa was slow to speak, Sun Dakong smiled faintly. If it's really inconvenient, just pretend I didn't say anything. It was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. I originally thought that as a senior from your number 60 high school, and a role model in the eyes of most young people, it would definitely be a good motivator if I could show off my ability and talent at such a public event. Old leader, don't misunderstand, that's not what I meant. Oh, it's fine as long as it's not like that, Sun Dakong replied swiftly, directly choking off the rest of Ajwa's words. Ajwa had wanted to ask if he could perform something else, without using the sky-parting sword, even if it was a boulder on his chest. But Sun Dakong's unquestionable and resolute attitude had already thoroughly dispelled this idea. This time, there was no way he could run away. Ajwa sighed inwardly, feeling a genuine pain in the ass. Now, he was in a very difficult situation. It was hard to get off the tiger. If he did this well, Secretary Sun Dakong would be happy, and he might be promoted. He could say goodbye to his position as the deputy director, who had been in charge of receiving guests for many years, and start a new life. But if he didn't do a good job, he was well aware that he would really have to say goodbye to this position. To be able to sit in this position at such a young age, it's really not easy. As he spoke, Sun Dakong suddenly got up and solemnly patted Ajwa on the shoulder, scaring him so much that he almost fell off his chair. I know you may have your concerns. You must think that you're too young, and don't want to show off in front of an expert. You want to keep a low profile to avoid attracting attention, right? Let me tell you a story from the ancient Cultivation battlefield. Sun Dakong said. Ajwa raised his head, and there was more vigor in his eyes. Back then, the last battle before the founding of our country, the Battle of Sherman. Most of the youngsters had only heard of legends regarding the ancient Cultivation battlefield. This dusty history couldn't even be found in the history textbooks of middle and high schools, and it was only in university that one had a preliminary understanding of it. Ajwa wasn't a history major at university, but he had a basic understanding of the Battle of Sherman. That battle was really too famous. As Secretary Dakong recounted the story, his eyes welled up with crystalline tears, as if he was remembering many things. In that battle back then, the 7 demon gods from the gate between worlds bore down on us with overwhelming might. Together with Minister Shi Yuliang of the current Ministry of National Defense, we stood guard outside the stone gate of Dagerich. Eyes wide, Ajwa listened quietly, being able to personally hear the person involved narrate the history. This wasn't an opportunity that everyone would have. Those were demon gods. They were so powerful, their godly might soaring to the sky, and they unleashed countless nomological laws. Heaven and earth lost color, and the phenomenon was astonishing. Even the sun was pressed down, and from hundreds of li away, one could see the blazing nomological flames above the stone gate. The leader of the demon gods was quite powerful. His entire body was resplendent with every move he made, and even heaven and earth resonated with him. On his own, Minister Shi Yuliang tried everything he could, but in the end, he was unable to contend with them. But this battle was already the last stop. In the Battle of Sherman, the task given to us by the higher-ups was to hold the pass. Even if we couldn't win, we couldn't back down in the slightest. Ajwa listened very attentively, and his thoughts drifted along with the old secretary's narration. He could already imagine the terrifying scene of the ancient cultivation battlefield, where the flames of war soared to the sky and godly might bore down on them. But now, standing in front of him and telling him this story, the seemingly middle-aged old secretary was already a living fossil. He had walked step by step from that era, witnessed the development of the times and scientific progress, and sat in his current position. This conversation revealed a sense of age. It made Audiobook feel as if it were a lifetime ago. In the end, we were all exhausted and fell at the pass of the stone gate. Only Department Head Yu Liang stood up alone. He ignited his own divine blood, using the supreme being bone within his body as the price to summon the divine artifact Gao Shaoqin. He played a divine song, replenishing everyone's strength. He also raised his own potential to the limit. In the end, he killed 7 gods in a row. He defended the stone gate and laid the foundation for the founding of Huaxiao Nation. But Minister sure survived in the end, said Audiobook. The old secretary smiled. That's right. He survived. At that time, even the tombstone had been set up, and he was already buried. Who knows? This guy's pet bird Little Red threw a divine grass at his grave to nourish his vitality. But in the end, he crawled out of the grave on his own. Don't you think it's funny, Audiobook? In this world, the number of people who could call this old minister this guy could really be counted on one hand. What do you understand after listening to the story? Sun Dakong asked Audiobook. The old secretary's story wasn't told for nothing. It was very important to summarize it. After listening to the story, Audiobook felt a lot of emotion in his heart. The old secretary used this story to tell me that I need perseverance in doing things, and that I mustn't give up until the last moment. I have to learn a lot from Minister Shi Yuliang and pay tribute to his tenacious vitality, right? You're thinking too much. Secretary Sun rolled his eyes. I want to tell you that if you have any talent, hurry up and show it. Don't hide it. Don't be like Minister Shi, hiding a big move and only using it at the last moment. In the end, you almost lost yourself. You're not Ultraman. Once you had a chance to show off in front of you. If you can show it off, don't wait until you lose it before it's too late for regrets. Chapter 48. Ever since the Peiyuan district branch of the Pengxi gang had collapsed, Madame Dong had led a group of old men and women to establish the General Administration of Harmony. From then on, the Peiyuan district's chaos of racketeering and all sorts of acts that caused chaos in public order seemed to disappear without a trace. No one wanted to be blocked by a group of old men and women on their way to work, forcing them to recite the core values of the cultivation doctrine and the 8 honors and 8 shames to the Little Red Book. Just like that, the people who illegally parked on the street disappeared, and even the people who ran the red light disappeared. In just a few short days, the General Administration of Harmony had escorted no less than 1,000 repeat thieves to the local General Administration of Cultivation in Peiyuan District, eating until the bottom of the detention center's granary. All the policemen at the General Administration of Cultivation worked overtime to take notes and leave a criminal record. It was as if the local cultivation police station of Peiyuan District had become a subsidiary department of old Madame Dong of the General Administration of Harmony. The most infuriating thing was that the police couldn't say anything, because it had to be admitted that ever since the General Administration of Harmony appeared, the quality of Peiyuan District had indeed improved a lot in all aspects. Moreover, this group of old men and women were very shrewd. They did not leave any traces behind. On the surface, they did not seem to be breaking the law. Even if they pulled someone into a corner and beat him up, they would choose a blind spot. In short, Madame Dong was completely famous. When old Madame Dong walked around Peiyuan District now, even the traffic police couldn't help trembling when they saw her, and would respectfully address her as Miss Dong. However, Miss Dong herself was rather dissatisfied with the current situation of the General Administration of Harmony. That morning, Madame Dong clasped her hands behind her back and strolled leisurely like an old leader who had been behind the scenes for a long time. as she arrived at the secret stronghold of the General Administration of Harmony. This base was originally an ordinary abandoned factory, waiting to be rented and transferred. The rent was very cheap, so Madame Dong and several senior leaders of the General Administration of Harmony each took out some of their retirement pay and pooled their money together to buy this factory. In just 2 days, the idle items in the factory had been swept clean, and the inside was divided into several areas. First, the peaceful reporting area. The people of Peiyuan District could spontaneously report uncivilized behavior in society, and the General Administration of Harmony would lend a helping hand as long as it touched on the core values of cultivation. Second, the Harmony Entertainment District. This area was specially set aside for the old men and women of the headquarters to dance in the square, so as not to disturb the rest of the people nearby. Old Madame Dong had also purchased a soundproof system at her own expense and set 2 regular square dance songs. The main song was Superstars in Troubled Times, and the closing song was Gokura Kajodo, which had a domineering tone with a hint of joy. Third, a harmonious meeting room. As the name suggested, this conference room was used by Madame Dong to convene high-level leaders for emergency assignments. In addition to these 3 areas, there were 2 small areas left, which were the Harmony Fitness Room and Madame Dong's independent office. As usual, the first thing Madame Dong did when she arrived at the office was to immediately go to the bathroom to get a bucket of water. Then, she took a clean white cloth and began to carefully wipe the stone that was enshrined in front of the desk. From an outsider's point of view, there was nothing strange about this stone, but for everyone in the General Administration of Harmony, it had extraordinary significance, because it was engraved with the 24 incantations. It was the one Wang Ling had left behind back then. While she was wiping, an old man with a red scarf on his arm came to the office door and knocked on it. "Miss Dong, are you busy?" The old man's surname was Zhang, and he was Madame Dong's right-hand man. A red armband was the symbol of a high-level leader in the General Administration of Harmony. Madame Dong didn't say anything as she focused on wiping the stone. 5 minutes later, she wrung out the white cloth and threw it into the bucket of water. She straightened the stone on the desk, and then lit 3 incense sticks in the stove in front of the stone. During this process, Grandpa Zhang didn't say anything as he stood upright in front of the door. After silently waiting for Madame Dong to finish, she slowly turned around and looked at the door as she said indifferently, "Come in and talk." "Any new developments?" Madame Dong asked as she stared fixedly at the stone on the desk. "No, we haven't received any news from the director yet. Could he have abandoned us?" the old man replied. "That's impossible. Back then, the director left this stone for us. He gave us the confidence and hope in social security. We abide by the core values of cultivation and adhere to the principle of coming from the people to the people. We serve the people wholeheartedly." Saying this, Madame Dong became excited, and there was a look of sudden realization in her deep eyes. "I know. It must be that our harmony isn't strong enough and hasn't moved the director." "I think so too." Grandpa Zhang nodded in agreement. Madame Dong frowned. "But given our current financial situation, it's not enough to spread the team to other districts. We already don't have enough manpower in Peiyuan District." Grandpa Zhang also sighed. "The new old men and women only know how to play fight the landlord and mahjong all day long. This is already a serious violation of the Iron Community rules of our General Administration of Harmony. The newcomers don't know the rules, so just teach them a little. You have to be patient. Is the financial statement out yet? Let me calculate how much money we're still short of." Grandpa Zhang was silent for a moment. "The statement will be sent here soon. I don't think Miss Dong needs to worry about funds for the time being." In the morning, an enthusiastic member of the public sent us a bank card. "The funds in it are already enough for our initial operations." Madame Dong had a strange expression on her face. Could it be that this was a card from the director? "Have you found out where this card came from?" "It shouldn't have come from the director. We're still investigating its origin." Apart from a bank card, this person also sent a letter stating the purpose of this card, which was to subsidize the General Administration of Harmony's expenses. Grandpa Zhang carefully recalled for a moment. Then his eyes widened, as if he remembered something. Oh, that's right. Auntie Lee from the technical department found a faint watermark on the envelope, which looked like a string of numbers. Perhaps it's a clue that the other party left for us. Madame Dong's eyes turned as she cupped her chin in thought for a moment. This should be a test that the other party left for us. If we don't even have this bit of reverse investigation ability, our general administration of harmony would be too degrading. We have to find out where this letter came from as soon as possible. Yes, Miss Dong. Grandpa Zhang nodded. Oh, that's right. What's this string of numbers? Madame Dong asked. Chapter 49. On this day, there was a faint unusual aura in the air at number 59 high school. The wind rustled on campus, and there was a storm everywhere. Senior He Bufeng, with a total score of 8,823 in 3 years, was actually in class. The students were silent, and the teachers wept. No one knew what on earth had happened to this delinquent in the last 24 hours. Tang Jingze felt that this was very unusual, and that there was most likely something fishy going on. It was much more shocking than director Xie Huichuan's relationship. Although Tang Jingze didn't know exactly what had happened to He Bufeng, based on He Bufeng's performance, Tang Jingze could more or less guess that He Bufeng had been thoroughly defeated in his showdown with number 60 high school's pretty boy with the crew cut. Otherwise, given He Bufeng's learning attitude, he would never have degenerated to the point of abandoning himself to attend class. Through He Bufeng's incident, Tang Jingze also saw the essence of the situation. This bunch of people from number 60 high school were simply the bane of number 59 high school. They were truly a toxic bunch. Since coming to number 60 high school, there was no need to mention the damage they had done to the school's public facilities. Even director Xie Huichuan and number 1 delinquent, He Bufeng, had fallen into their hands one after another. In Tang Jingze's heart, these two people had been godlike figures who were like two high towers. But now, with number 60 high school's arrival, they no longer existed. Tang Jingze completely understood that this was a bunch of people he couldn't afford to provoke. He was just a mere president of the student union. It really wasn't worth risking his life for this bunch of people. Tomorrow was the last day of the student exchange meet between number 59 high school and number 60 high school, and the curtains were about to be drawn on that crucial spirit sword exchange meet. Seeing that the spirit sword exchange meet was about to begin, the number 60 high school students were a little restless. It was impossible to say that they weren't nervous. After all, this was a matter of honor for both schools. Everyone's level was actually about the same, and it was a competition of concentration. But this kind of thing couldn't be said for sure, and had a lot to do with one's mentality. Everyone usually trained in a relatively closed environment. But tomorrow, under the gazes of thousands of people, they would represent the school to demonstrate their ability to control spirit swords. Even a small mistake might cause the entire situation to collapse. Of course, the spirit sword exchange meet wasn't the most terrifying thing. The most frightening thing was that old Antique announced another piece of bad news that afternoon. Mother Wan was here. This news was far more frightening than the fear brought about by the spiritual sword exchange meet. Speaking of which, Mother Wan was also a senior at No. 60 high school. She had worked diligently in the school's canteen for over 100 years, and even the first-generation teachers of number 60 high school had eaten her communal pot of rice. One of Mother Wan's memorable traits was that her hands wouldn't tremble when she scooped food, especially when she scooped up meat. She was always generous in scooping up a big spoonful of food, eager for the students to eat more. So until now, Mother Wan's era of communal rice was still a memory for many people. Quite a number of number 60 high alumni who had graduated would ask to try Mother Wan's cooking again when they returned to their alma mater to visit. Back then, every dish she made could be considered a classic. However, this was only limited to that time. Around a few years ago, Mother Wan had suddenly asked Headmaster Chen to bring along 2 disciples to cook for her. Mother Wan herself had decided to retire behind the scenes to research new dishes. Headmaster Chen had thought that this was a good thing. But no one had ever expected that Mother Wan would embark on a path of no return with dark cuisine. Mother Wan was a violent person, and this violence wasn't only reflected in her research of new recipes, but also in other aspects. Back when Shadow Stream had attacked number 60 high school, Mother Wan had smashed one of the assassins to death with a large soup ladle. Back when Ajwa had graduated, Mother Wan had already completely bid farewell to her era of communal rice. The two disciples she had now brought along were pretty average at cooking, and weren't even 1/10 or 2/10 of what she had been at her peak. This was Old Antique, the famous foodie at number 60 high school, who had personally experienced the difference between the former and the latter. Of course, while these two disciples weren't very good at cooking, what terrified the teachers and students of number 60 high the most was Mother Wan's love lunchboxes at noon every Friday. Mother Wan's greatest hobby was to seal the dark cuisines she had invented into love lunchboxes, and then happily distribute them to all the teachers and students in the school at noon every Friday. It could be said that the teachers and students were miserable beyond words. Number 60 high school's headmaster had changed 5 terms, and Mother Wan had been there since the first term. She had been in charge of number 60 high school's canteen for hundreds of years. It could be said that she was a founding figure. Even Headmaster Chun and Director Sure were very polite when they met her, and no one dared to complain at all. Of course, Mother Wan had also given Headmaster Chun this lunchbox with the dark cuisine sealed in it. At that time, Headmaster Chun had braced himself to eat the stir-fried chili mooncake in front of Mother Wan's smiling face. After all, it took a lot of time and effort to prepare these lunchboxes. Although the cuisine was very dark, Mother Wan's intentions were very sunny. The path of exploring cuisine was a very difficult one to begin with. Thus, even though the teachers and students of number 60 high school felt bitter in their hearts, they chose to endure it in silence. They could only hope that Mother Wan could come up with new cuisines soon, so that dark cuisine would no longer be dark. The Spirit Sword Exchange meet happened to be on Friday, and Mother Wan prepared the love lunchboxes in advance on Thursday as usual. In the end, when she checked the number of people, she realized that there were actually 6 fewer people than usual on Friday. Mother Wan patted her head as she instantly remembered number 59 high school student exchange meet. Without stopping to rest, she hurriedly made 6 special lunchboxes and flew her donkey brand flying sword on her way to deliver the lunchboxes. And then, there was the current scene. Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, Super Chin, Feather Lin, Hero Gua and Old Antique sat in a row in the quiet school building. In front of each of them was a lunchbox of love, which Mother Wan had carefully prepared. The pink lunchbox didn't hide Mother Wan's girlish heart at all. In front of them was a middle-aged woman, wearing a snow-white chef's uniform and a light yellow apron. Her curly hair was tied into a small ball under her chef's hat. This was Mother Wan. Hands on her hips, she said in a domineering manner, "Everyone, hurry up and eat while it's hot. These 6 lunchboxes are specially custom-made and will be delivered early. They can replenish your body with all kinds of nutrients, so that you can better prepare for the Spirit Sword Exchange meet tomorrow." Wang Ling took a deep breath. His sense of smell was much more sensitive than that of an ordinary person. Even though the dark seal on these lunchboxes had yet to be removed, he could still smell a scent that was even more bizarre than the fruit and vegetable juice that Tang Jingza had given him. If they ate this thing, they might all end up dead tomorrow. "Everyone, let's eat. Don't disappoint Mother Wan's good intentions." In the end, Old Antique was Old Antique. Even in this situation, he didn't break his composure and was very calm. Old Antique braced himself and took the lead to open the lunchboxes. In the end, everyone was shocked. Today's food actually looked pretty normal? "Is this stir-fried shredded potato?" Old Antique asked as he picked up a piece of crystal-clear shredded potato with his chopsticks. Mother Wan shook her head and said, "No, this is heavenly silkworm potato." Lotus Sun pointed to the tomato slices on the side of the potato shredded. "Then what is this dish?" "Oh, this dish." Mother Wan smiled and said, "This dish is called Holy Shit Tomato." Chapter 50. In number 60 high school, Music classes were as rare as old antiques theory of history classes. The music teacher was Teacher Ding Dingyu. Come to think of it, he could be considered a veteran in the music circle. He had taught a lot of students and had written a lot of songs big and small. But apart from that famous ballad of Xu Xian, he didn't seem to have any other noteworthy works. Teacher Ding worked part-time as a music teacher in a lot of schools, and used the pitiful number of classes given to him to unearth young talents with musical accomplishments. Teacher Ding was very bitter, but couldn't say it out loud. A while ago, Teacher Ding had been invited as a guest on a variety show. Then, a group of people had surrounded him and started to ridicule him one by one. Some people said that Teacher Ding had once been a vein of pop music and had been at the forefront. Now, after so many years, Teacher Ding was still in the pop music ranks, but he was hovering at the back and refused to fall behind. In order to carry this old man, Huaxiao Nation's pop music couldn't even run. At first glance, this sounded a little sarcastic. Teacher Ding knew that this was just ridicule, and that as a musician, he should have a spirit of entertainment. After hearing this, Teacher Ding still felt a little uncomfortable. But it had to be said that this vicious ridicule also made Teacher Ding re-examine his own musical path. Am I really old? Teacher Ding had never been one to admit that he was old. He felt that he was as young as the children nowadays. But every time he saw Headmaster Chen at school, the latter would respectfully call him Old Ding. This made Teacher Ding feel a heartbreak from the bottom of his heart. A lot of the time, music creation was a matter of theme and creativity. For the ballad of Xu Xian from back then, Teacher Ding had fused elements of R&B and opera into the ancient style, which doubled the rhythm of the entire song in the early stages. When the opera and the chorus came out, it instantly made people feel as if they were walking on air. Of all the songs that Teacher Ding had composed over the years, the most famous was Ballad of Xu Xian. Apart from that, there were also some songs that Wang Ling liked very much. For example, Eternal Azura, Past Events of the Great Wilderness, and so on. This was a talent, and also someone whom Wang Ling greatly admired. As a composer, Mr. Ding incorporated his own ideas into every song. He tried hard to pass on his years of musical attainments to all the musicians who were currently working hard. Even in the scientific cultivation era, music was still incomparably important and indispensable to the shaping of the mind and soul. Mr. Ding felt that no form of music would ever decline. There would always be a group of loyal listeners. However, as a musician, he had to work hard and pay with his own blood, tears, and sweat. Music is not a jigsaw puzzle. It is not something that can be pieced together. It is also not something that can be imitated by a parrot or copied. Mr. Ding always liked to popularize his music philosophy to everyone in his class. At the same time, he abhorred plagiarism in the music industry. As an original composer, Mr. Ding felt that he could not grow old. He still had many missions to fulfill. The last class on Friday was Mr. Ding's music class. Professor Ding slowly walked into the classroom. The entire classroom was silent, and no one spoke. The students of Elite Class 1 gave this old artist enough respect. However, Mr. Ding seemed a little different today. He seemed especially happy. Did Mr. Ding have some new inspiration? Lotus Sun asked with a smile. That's right. Mr. Ding didn't deny it. I'll be releasing a new song soon. I hope everyone will like it. As soon as he said this, the whole class instantly burst into an uproar. Wow. Mr. Ding is releasing a new song. What kind of song is it? Where did the teacher get his inspiration from? Everyone remembered that it had been a long time since Mr. Ding had released a new song. The older people got, the more cautious they became. Of course, Mr. Ding was no exception. In Mr. Ding's music dictionary, there was absolutely no such thing as shoddy production. As long as he participated in the creation of a song, he would definitely give it his all. This was probably the moral integrity of the older generation of artists. Hearing the students' questions, Mr. Ding smiled. This is a school-style song, and the source of inspiration was none other than you. It was you who inspired me. Mr. Ding, don't hide it. Why don't you sing it for us? If you want to listen, of course that's fine. But I also have two small requests. Mr. Ding smiled slightly. A few days ago, I gave you guitar homework, and I don't know if you've practiced it seriously. I hope that a classmate can step forward and finish the guitar part. In addition, I hope that a female classmate can sing with me. This is a song for a man and a woman to sing together." Before Mr. Ding could finish speaking, Master of Dopey slapped his thigh. "My God! Mr. Ding, you're developing toward the legend of the Phoenix. Wang Ling, Lotus Sun, Super Chen, Feather Lin, and Li Xianjing. Classmate Gua, please correct your attitude." After a long silence, Lotus Sun was the first to step forward. "Mr. Ding, let me sing. But the guitar. I'm not very good at it." "Okay. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Then for the guitar part, I'll pick a random boy. A man and a woman working together won't be tiring." Mr. Ding glanced at the roster and finally chose a name from the thousands of students. "Wang Ling, who is classmate Wang Ling. Please come up." Wang Ling. Wang Ling hadn't expected Mr. Ding to pick him up. Wang Ling was used to keeping a low profile and didn't like to show off his abilities in front of others. But since Mr. Ding had picked him up, Wang Ling felt that he had no other reason to refuse. This was a teacher whom Wang Ling respected very much, and he felt that he had to give him this much face. On his arm was the new Dao Talisman seal, which Wang Ming had invented, so for the time being, Wang Ling didn't have to worry about controlling his strength. The first 3 months after the new Dao Talisman seal was when the restraining effect was at its strongest. Wang Ling took out a school-issued practice guitar from his pocket and slowly walked up to the stage. "Now I'll transmit the structure of the song to you." Mr. Ding gave a gentle smile, and a spirit light appeared in his hand, which slowly seeped into Wang Ling and Lotus Sun's minds. From lyric writing, composition, arrangement to singing skills, playing skills, after about 5 minutes, the transmission was over. "Do you understand?" Mr. Ding asked. Wang Ling and Lotus Sun nodded. Then student Wang Ling, student Lotus Sun, and I will present this song, "The Helplessness of the Immortal King," to everyone. After Mr. Ding said this, Wang Ling strummed the strings. And then, accompanied by the brisk and refreshing sound of the guitar, the magnetic sound was like a poem floating in the wind, and it had a different kind of charm to it. "Last night, I cultivated till the third watch, again troubled by a trifle the helplessness of the immortal king, who on earth can see clearly a caddy of Dao talismans for ascension, who will listen to the past true wish, in fact, world peace. School life is like duckweed floating and floating, gathering and scattering, unpredictably chasing dreams, all the way remembering the little elf caught as a child, remembering the awkward scenes of those years. Holding hands, looking UPI, I have seen every year's brocade. Don't look back, with rhythm zinging, the ballad of a common immortal strutting forward, raising one's head. As long as I have you, I won't lose control of fate." Everyone was attracted by the song and marveled at the nostalgia in every word, which was full of charm, like old wine hidden in a cellar. From this melodious and cheerful song, they heard a beautiful prelude to youth. They saw the rolling, never-ending wheel of youth, a simple and unadorned old guitar, gently sweeping away a period of green and lush time. It outlined the long dusty memories in their minds, memories that seemed to have passed away, but also seemed to have never passed away. The elites of Grade 1, Class 3 couldn't help feeling a little emotional. This was a song of youth that belonged to everyone. The daily life of the immortal king. Theme song, "The Helplessness of the Immortal King." List of main writers. // lyrics. Ku Xuanjuan performance. Old People X Feather Sacrifice Little Rabbit producer. Su Zhao composition. Deep YS arrangement. Mill guitar. Wang Ling mix. Mr. Once Happy May Day everyone. This song took a total of 3 months to compose. Before I even opened the book, I had been planning for it. From the lyrics, composition, arrangement, recording of the instruments, recording of the vocals and harmony of the singer, to the post-production mixing, and the promotion of the music video. Thank you very much to all the friends who worked together on this song. At the same time, I hope that all the brothers and sisters who truly love the daily life of the immortal king and Ku Xianjun will do their best to support Ku Xuanjuan's creation. This song is currently available for download on NetEase Cloud Music. There may be a delay in searching on NetEase Cloud. If you can't find the song by name, You can search for the singer directly. Ku Xianjun, come listen to the song. On B Station, search for Ku Xianjun. You can also search on the WeChat public platform, Ku Xianjun, with the keyword Immortal King to see it. Chapter 51. Whether it was the heavenly silkworm potato strips or the goddamn tomatoes. As always, the names were filled with Mother Wan's domineering and violent nature. But seeing that today's dishes seemed normal, everyone breathed long sighs of relief in their hearts. Old Antique stretched out his chopsticks and picked up a slice of tomato. Mother Wan immediately added 3 spoonfuls of white sugar from the seasoning bag she carried with her, and then smiled at Old Antique. 3 spoonfuls of sugar goes even better with the goddamn tomatoes. Everyone. After eating Mother Wan's bento made with love, everyone saw her off at the school gate and waved goodbye to her in the breeze. Although the love bento still tasted so strange, everyone was still very touched by Mother Wan's intentions. After checking the number of people, they realized that 6 people were missing. This old mother immediately remembered the group of students from number 60 high, who had come to the exchange meet between the 2 schools, and had hurried over to deliver the love bento that could only be eaten on Fridays in advance. It was worth mentioning that every time Mother Wan made the bento, she would count the number of people very precisely, no more and no less. Apart from Mother Wan, no one else in number 60 high could do this. This old mother, who had been in charge of number 60 high for 100 years, truly cared about the students and teachers of each batch. Goodbye, students. I'll come back to the Spirit Sword Exchange meet tomorrow, if I have the chance. Moi. After that, Mother Wan waved at everyone and left them with these chilling moi words. She then stepped on her donkey brand flying sword and flew off in a cloud of dust. There seemed to be a lot of things to do on the eve of the Spirit Sword Exchange meet. As soon as Mother Wan left, Wang Ling's eyelids started to twitch. Disaster level 2 stars. Wang Ling could more or less guess what was going to happen. The Dao Talisman seal on his arm was about to expire. It wasn't hard for Wang Ling to figure out what was going to happen. It was obvious that that guy was coming. That annoying guy whom Mother Wang had contacted before. Ever since he was a child, Wang Ming had always been a huge headache for Wang Ling. Even though the state classified Wang Ming's true identity as a state secret, and didn't stint on lavishing praise on him, comparing his brain to something even more terrifying than a holy weapon, Wang Ling's impression of his cousin was still limited to those 99 stupid challenges. To put it bluntly, this guy was just an idiot. Moreover, this kind of stupidity was also reflected in many aspects. Of all the stupid things Wang Ming did, the one he enjoyed the most was pretending to be a cultivator. It was 4:30 p.m. on Thursday. School ended on time for number 59 high school, and there was a constant stream of students heading to the school gate in 2s and 3s. A man also stood at the school gate on time. He was dressed in coarse hemp clothes, and his thick black hair was neatly trimmed. The man carried a long sword that weighed at least 50 kilograms on his back. He looked like an ascetic who traveled the world all year round. Unfortunately, his attire didn't match his temperament. If someone with a higher realm used their spiritual sense to scan him, they would immediately know that he was a muggle without any spiritual power. The essence, energy, and spirit of a cultivator contained a kind of natural essence energy. This kind of essence energy originated from heaven and earth, was born from the Dantian, and circulated through the meridians of the entire body. Over time, it could change a person's temperament from the inside out, making their eyebrows shine brightly, and their footsteps as light as the wind. A true cultivator could even give off a faint fragrance. Standing at the gate of number 59 high school, Wang Ming sighed in his heart. Even though he was young and promising, elegant, and extremely talented in cultivation, having talent didn't mean that he could cultivate. Because of his physique, Wang Ming had realized at a very young age that he had no fate with cultivation. Hence, he had devoted 100 times more energy to scientific research, watching impatiently as the Foundation Establishment high school students passed by him. Wang Ming couldn't help but look a little envious. If it wasn't for his physique, given his cultivation talent, a mere Wang Ling wouldn't be his match at all. Wang Ming thought regretfully in his heart. Sir, who are you looking for? Number 59 High School's school guard came over and asked a little warily. With the Spirit Sword Exchange meet coming up tomorrow, Number 59 High School had increased its efforts to investigate suspicious people inside and outside the school. Even parents had to report to the teachers in advance before they could enter the school, and the teachers had to call the school guard office to request permission before they could enter. But this person had been standing at the school gate since 20 minutes ago, sighing as he did so. The school guard thought that this person was a little strange. Looking at the old man, Wang Ming suddenly came back to his senses. Hello, fellow Taoist. I'm here to look for someone. The old man sensed a trace of an ancient aura from this form of address. He looked Wang Ming up and down carefully again. You're a parent? The old man also had a cultivation, although it wasn't a very high realm. However, he could still distinguish a cultivator's essence, qi and spirit. The term fellow Taoist was something that big shots with profound realms addressed each other. The old school guard stared at Wang Ming's face for a long time, but no matter how he looked at him, he couldn't tell that this person was a big shot. On the contrary, the more he looked, the more suspicious he felt. Yes, I'm a parent. I'm here to look for someone. Wang Ming carefully calculated his seniority. When all was said and done, he was also an older brother. He was a whole 6 years older than Wang Ling. It didn't seem wrong to call him a parent. Thus he nodded. Which student's parent are you and which class? I'm here to look for number 60 High School's Wang Ling. He's representing the school at the exchange meet. The old man was suddenly enlightened. So it was that group of people. But as a student's parent, the old man was still suspicious of Wang Ming's identity. A parent of a foundation establishment student should at least be at the golden core stage, right? Most of the school teachers were at the golden core stage, and the old guard had come into contact with them a lot, so he could still distinguish this aura. It was very obvious that this person didn't have the slightest bit of spirit energy on him. Thinking about the recent assassination attempt by Shadow Stream at number 60 High School, the old guard's thoughts couldn't help drifting. In the last 2 days, the higher-ups had issued clear orders to be on guard for fear that Shadow Stream would take advantage of the Spirit Sword Exchange meet to retaliate. Now, number 59 High School's entrance examination was very strict, and internal security had arranged patrols and experts to keep watch. To be honest, the old guard didn't think that Shadow Stream would have the guts to brazenly sneak into the school. But this young man pretending to be a cultivator had indeed successfully attracted the old man's attention. Chapter 52. However, the old man didn't have any evidence to prove that Wang Ming was pretending to be a cultivator. This was a society ruled by law, and everything required evidence. This old man, who had been in the criminal investigation department for many years, naturally understood this principle. After pondering for a moment, the old man held out his hand to Wang Ming. Sir, please give me your ID card. If you're a parent, our school authorities will verify your identity. Wang Ming didn't think too much about it, and straightaway fished out his ID card from his pocket. The old man took his ID card, turned to the guard room, and took out a portable card scanner before inserting his ID card into it. For the last 2 days, number 59 High School had been on high alert in order to ensure that the exchange meet between the two schools could proceed smoothly. This portable card scanner was used to check the identities of suspicious people. Generally, the school would only use it during the college entrance examination. As long as the ID card was inserted into the scanner, it could instantly verify whether it was real or fake. This old man, who was experienced in criminal investigation, thought that if this person had really been sent by criminals, it was likely that his ID card wasn't real either. It had to be said that the old man's judgment in criminal investigation was indeed very good. Wang Ming's ID card was indeed fake. But the producer of this fake ID card was none other than Huaxiao Nation's Cultivation Academy of Science. Official forgeries were the most lethal. Wang Ming's identity had always been protected by Huaxiao Nation as a state secret, and no one could find out anything about him. Take this fake ID card, for example. Apart from his age, basically everything else was fake. What birthplace, ID number, and even his portrait had been filtered to make him look good. This could be considered special treatment for Wang Ming, the youngest academician in Huaxiao Nation's history. So, forget a mere old-school guard. Even if the Cultivation police personally came to check his ID card, Wang Ming wouldn't be able to do it. Wang Ming didn't even have to be modest. In the end, just as Wang Ming had expected, his ID card passed the card scanner very smoothly. Like a POS machine, the card scanner printed out a long list, which gave the old-school guard a blank look. Name: Wang Shower. Gender: male. Age: 22. Place of origin: Fragrant Pavilion and Water Pavilion, Yunding Heavenly Palace, Tianba City, Huaxiao Nation. Character experience: Wang Xiao'er came from a poor family, but he is extremely talented. He is one of the rarest existences in the entire Cultivation continent. He has a younger sister called Wang Xiaohua, but unfortunately, she is not his biological daughter. He frequents the auction houses and the underground markets. He has a female confidant, but she was born with yin energy and cannot take care of herself. At the age of 16, he accidentally gave his first time to the legendary demon Medusa. The above information has been verified by Huaxiao National Cultivation Police Department. The old man cursed in his heart when he saw this nonsensical character experience. This experience is even more incredible than a web novel. What surprised the grandpa the most was that this strange and miraculous experience had actually passed the examination of the Cultivation police. There must be some kind of deal going on behind the scenes, right? It was actually Wang Ming himself who had written this unreliable life story. Back then, the president of the Cultivation Academy of Science had repeatedly asked Wang Ming to revise it. But in the end, he couldn't dissuade Wang Ming's persistence. Wang Ming had always regretted the fact that he was unable to cultivate despite his talent. So he was very serious about this kind of detail. He wasn't a cultivator, but he still wanted to pretend to be one. Whatever other cultivators had, he had to have it too. Wang Ming had summed up the life story on the ID card based on the Cultivation novels he had read. No matter how inconceivable it looked to outsiders, he was at least very satisfied. As for the long sword that Wang Ming carried on his back, it weighed 100 jin, but it was a real immortal sword. Wang Ming had given this heavy longsword the name Xianzhong. Although he didn't have spirit energy and couldn't use it, Wang Ming still braced himself and carried it wherever he went. So to sum it up in one sentence, it was that Wang Ming was stubborn and liked to put on airs. This was also why Wang Ling hated Wang Ming a little. Wang Ming's stupidity was reflected in every aspect. This definitely wasn't just a one-sided statement. Relying on his flawless ID card, Wang Ming had entered number 59 high school as he had wished. But he wasn't in a hurry to look for Wang Ling. Instead, he turned into the grove on the side of the tree-lined path, found a secluded corner, and put down the long sword on his back. As soon as the immortal sword touched the ground, the lawn instantly sank into a shallow pit. Damn it, this sword was too heavy. Wang Ming's forehead was covered in sweat. An immortal sword that weighed 100 jin was like a toy in the hands of any Foundation establishment cultivator. But as an ordinary person, Wang Ming felt that his shoulder would be dislocated after carrying this sword for so long without taking a break. I have to deliver the Dao Talisman to Wang Ling as soon as possible. Putting on airs was one thing, but Wang Ming hadn't forgotten his mission this time. Delivering the Dao Talisman was his #1 mission. After all, it was currently the only way to suppress Wang Ling's power. He had to deliver it to Wang Ling before the last Dao Talisman was about to expire. Otherwise, all of humanity could face a crisis. While he was thinking this, Wang Ming decided to set off. Just as he was about to lift the black heavy sword, a pretty girl in number 59 high school's uniform walked slowly toward him from a distance. This was a tall girl, and even number 59 high school's ugly uniform couldn't hide her beautiful face. The school jacket was slightly open, and Wang Ming could even vaguely see the other party's sexy collarbone and the plump F***K long straight black hair. And it was a 3060. Wang Ming was so excited that he sucked in a breath. In a flash, he picked up the 50-gene black heavy sword from the ground and carried it on his back. It was obvious that the frantic secretion of adrenaline had numbed Wang Ming's sensory nerves. Initially, Wang Ming had to crouch down to carry the sword on his back, but now, it was effortless for him to lift it with one hand. "Hello, may I ask, can you do me a favor?" The long-haired girl walked over and lowered her head a little shyly. Her voice was simply too melodious, as crisp as a wind chime, and Wang Ming felt relaxed and happy when he heard it. He had really been cooped up in the research institute for too long, and it had taken him great effort to take 2 days off this time to deliver the Dao talisman to Wang Ling. Who would have thought that his luck with women would be waiting for him here? Looking at the girl, Wang Ming instantly let his imagination run wild. Even the black heavy sword on his back didn't feel heavy anymore. "Of course, no problem. How can I help you?" As a gentleman, Wang Ming felt that he had no reason to refuse a beautiful woman's request. "You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."